Hey, it's 1:30, everyone. I'd like to get started. Sooner we get started, the sooner we can go and outside enjoy the sunshine. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and it's great to see so many people here in person today, and thank you for taking an interest in your local government. Because we do have a large crowd here today, I'd like to set a couple of ground rules right from the start of the meeting. Please be respectful and no cheering, clapping, booing, or talking amongst yourselves. I really appreciate that. First, we'd like to recognize that we're conducting this meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Shuswap and Wachusett First Nations, and we're grateful for the opportunity to do so. I would also like to recognize that we are holding, we have directors calling in from other First Nations territories within our Nuu-chah-nulth lands, and I'd also like to acknowledge those nations with our respect and our gratitude. I'd like to also give notice that to attendees and delegates, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to YouTube on the Regional District website. Now, because this is a hybrid meeting, we have people in the boardroom and also on Zoom. People on Zoom, you can see their names, but you don't know who's in the boardroom, so we'll go around and do introductions. My name is Debbie Haggard, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Regional District Board. Chair Jack is unable to be with us today, so I will be chairing the meeting. CAO, can you do it from now next?
Thank you. I'm Daniel Sayan. I'm the CAO for the Alberni Pye Regional District.
Susan Roth for Beaver Creek.
Kel Roberts, alternate director for Area C, Long Beach.
Wilford Coots from the Wachusett Tribe Government.
Mike Sparrow, Cherokee Electoral District.
Good afternoon, Penny Cody, Alberni Quaquot Sprout Lake Rep.
Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Mike Hurd, General Manager of Planning and Development.
Good afternoon, Wendy Thompson, General Manager, Administrative Services for the Regional District.
Good afternoon, Charlie Stewart, Regional Fire Services Manager.
I'll sidle up here. Good afternoon, Alex Dyer, Planning Manager with the ACRD. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is to approve the agenda. We do have two late items. First is under 91H, late submission for RT 23005 zoning bylaw text amendment for accessory dwelling units. And under item 12 is committee appointments. Is there any other additions from directors? Do you have any additional late items, corporate officer?
No additional late items.
Could I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Director Coots, seconded by Director Cote. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Declarations. Is there any conflict of interest or gifts exceeding $250 in value as per section 106 of the Community Charter? Director Sparrow.
I'm in conflict of 9.1 E.
Thank you, Director Sparrow. Please remind me as we get there, because I may forget to ask you to leave. Adoption of minutes. First, we have the Board of Directors meeting dated June the 14th, 2023. Could I get a motion? Is there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I get a motion that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held on June 14th, 2023 be adopted? Moved by Director Sparrow, seconded by Director Roth. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is minutes from the Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee meeting May 31st, 2023. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, could I get a motion that the minutes of the Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee meeting held on May 31st, 2023 be adopted? Moved by Director Roth, seconded by Director Roberts. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have petitions, delegations, and presentations. First, we have Leanne Moore, Regional Continuing Education and Training, and Bob Hagen, Director, Continuing Education and Training, North Island College, regarding the meat processing course put on partnership with the ACRD, NIC, and the Canada Workforce Response Grant. Welcome, Leanne.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I think I'll present, and I'll call on Leanna. She can barge in if I make any errors. So I guess we have 10 minutes. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, that's fantastic. So thank you very much for inviting us to be delegates today. And also thank you very much for sponsoring the training program that we put on for the meat processing program. That was a really great program, and I think it was quite successful. So, and I also want to thank some specific people, because we couldn't do this without the help of a lot of folks that step up and do hard work. So Amy Mayo from the ACRD, who coordinated the training from the aspect of putting in the proposal, helping us kind of work with the students to make sure that they had everything they needed during the delivery of the program. So that was great to have her help. And Leanne Moore, who is a staff member, the regional training officer in Port Alberni. She's been there for quite a number of years, has done a fantastic job for us. We couldn't do half of the stuff we do in Port Alberni without Leanne's hard work on the ground, getting things done. And also want to thank Kate Smith from the Doc Plus Food Hub. We delivered the training at the Doc Plus, and that was a great experience as well. Such a wonderful facility to have, making it possible for us to deliver training like this. And then Heather Shobe, who works at the ACRD and the Agricultural Committee, she has been a tireless supporter of everything to do with creating agricultural programs that support the region. So, one of the things, as humans, we kind of like to eat every single day, and in order to have food to eat, we need to, support the farmers and the producers. And it's really great to have, people working with local producers and farmers in the area to bring us that kind of better quality product that is available when it doesn't have to travel, from California or from, Australia or from New Zealand. So, it's great. And also want to thank our instructor, Dave Semmelink, who is a farmer in the Comox Valley, he's been a farm instructor for us for quite a few years, and is also a meat producer. And, it's always hard to put these programs on. I guess it all started when one of the directors of the regional district, Director Tanya Shannon, presented to the North Island College Board of Directors that really needed a meat processing program in the Alberni region to support the producers. Because one of the problems with, if you're a livestock producer, you do a great job of grazing the animal on your farm and taking care of them, and bringing the vet out when they have problems, and then you send them off to for processing, and they have to be trucked out of town, and really all the profit pretty much goes to the processors, and the producer gets very little out of it. So this program was really in response to the need to help producers retain more of the profits and make the programs a little bit easier to deliver in the community. So the process for community workforce response grants. These grants are available for any nonprofit, local government, First Nation to apply for it. And, they can bring in up to $300,000 into a community to support training that's needed in the community. And so, the process always starts with somebody from the community asking the college to put on a program. And so then we say, okay, yes, meat processing, we've never done this before. I'm sure we can do it. Yes, we'll do it. We have to find now a sponsor to write the proposal. So the proposal has to be written by someone in the community. So as a college, we can't just invent a program and then get funding and then try and sell it in the community. We have to actually work with a local agency and try and find programs that actually do meet the needs of the community, which is kind of really what we should be doing in the first place. So it's a great program or a great process that's been developed. And so, first of all, the request came to us at a board meeting, which gets our attention because then our president actually brings it to us as CE people, and then we're kind of obligated to deliver this training. Then we find a sponsor, we write the proposal, jointly to get the funding. Then we negotiate the funding with the funder, and then we have to find a instructor, and then we have to find curriculum. So we have to develop that from scratch generally, and it's quite a long process. So the idea came to us March of 2022, and it took us a full year almost to get that program underway and delivered. And then the program gets delivered, and we have to find a location for it. We find students that can take the training and deliver the training. And this training went really well. It was a great program. We had 8 students delivering or taking the training. They all completed the program. I think we spent $15,000 of the funding we received to buy, purchase animals for the program. And as a result, we have, I think, ended up with 22 boxes of meat products that were donated to the Alberni Valley Food Security Society to be distributed among the poor people in Port Alberni. So, there's multiple levels of benefits to the community that came from this program. And we were really thrilled to be able to deliver it. And, thank you again to the ACRD for supporting it and supporting the development of food security and agriculture in the community. Did I miss anything, Leanne?
Some of the student outcomes that were, we had some that found work right away, some that are planning on opening up businesses, and some that have added on to their current career, such as a chef who added this portion on to enhance his skills.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so the I know that the outcome of the program was really to create a better group of skills in the community to meet the needs of the meat processing. And we are limited in a way in the workforce response grant that we have to find people who are unemployed, underemployed, or at risk of unemployment in order to qualify for the funding. So it's not always it's not always the people who really need the training who can get the training. So we're a little bit limited that way, but it's always good for us when we are at the college, when we're developing new programs. We develop our curriculum, we hire an instructor, we deliver it for the first time, and we always learn things from that first delivery. And then from that delivery, then we refine the program and actually make it better for the next time we deliver it. So, I think we have a lot of really good information now about what worked really well in this program and what we need to improve. And I think the next program will be even stronger for it. So I was told that we had 10 minutes and that I would be wise to speak for less than the 10 minutes because then we could entertain some questions. So I'm happy to take any questions that anybody has and I'm happy to provide answers if I'm able.
Thank you, Bob, for that presentation. It was nice to hear an update on the course. I've heard nothing but good things about it. But first, I want to thank both of you at North Island College for being such good community partners and also for willing to be so open to provide new courses that the community needs. So thank you so much. Is there any questions or comments from the board members? Dr. Boyko and then Director Cote.
Yes, thank you very much for that presentation. With regard to the course, is there one scheduled or do we have to put in a application to do it? I'm seeing it was on the Agricultural Development Committee meeting minutes, and they are looking to do the course again, potentially do it annually. What do we need to do to help you get it set up? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Director Boyko. So the process, I guess. For this course, this course cost about $15,000 per student to deliver the training, plus some of the supports that the students received. So it's a really expensive course. So I'm not sure, we deliver training that costs that much money quite often, but it's often great to get some funding for it. So an application would go through. The Workforce Response Grant applications are open right now for programs starting in September. And then once that those programs are done, there'll be another call for applications in, I think, around November for programs starting in January. So, we can certainly entertain another delivery. I know our instructor is eager to do it again, do the program again. And we are as well, because, you know, basically to deliver a training program, we have to pay a lot of money up front to develop curriculum. So, you know, whatever, we didn't recover all of our costs in this program because we had to develop curriculum up front to be able to deliver the training. Because this training leads to, you know, potentially to trade certification. We had to use a textbook. We had to build the training so that it laddered into the next stage of training and apprenticeship. So, you know, it was expensive to put the course on, and we'd love to deliver it again. So if the ACRD would like to you know, sponsor again, we'd be delighted to entertain that sponsorship again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the answer. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say,
Go ahead.
sorry, thank you, Chair. Through the chair, I was wondering if we could pass on to the CAO to see what we can actually do to help facilitate this.
Director Cote. It's on now? Okay, go ahead.
That's something that we would look into with our grants coordinator, Amy Mayo, and we can look into other grant opportunities that exist. We do also know that there's many opportunities through Island Coastal Economic Trust, the ICE-T, around different training opportunities there as well, or grant opportunities. So we can certainly take a look at that. And I think in a former meeting when we discussed this, there was also discussion from the board identifying how there's a number of community members actually that do their own hunting or do their own raise their own birds and whatnot on their property, and that something similar to this type of training would really be useful for the safe slaughtering of your own stock or and whatnot. So food for thought. There's definitely elements there for staff to follow up on and seek out some opportunities to see this happen again.
Thank you, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Through the chair, that's actually one of my questions was, I'm not sure what this program could actually, who it could help. One of the questions would be hunters, local hunters that bring their own produce back, produce. And I'm just wondering, I know that we've been looking at different abattoir options for our area, and hoping that maybe people having this course could actually benefit going forward. And very happy to be in a partnership. I've been following along with the Agriculture Advisory Committee in the past, and really happy to see this come forward. So thank you so much.
Excellent. And as far as the wild meat processing, that's you know, having a resource like the Dock Food Hub in the community, which is a government inspected facility, people can use that facility to process their products, and you know, of course teaches them how to use the facility really well. So happy to do that.
Bob, I'm sorry, but we can't hear what you were saying.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, having the Dock Food Hub in the region is a big benefit because it's an inspected facility and people can use that facility to process their products. So,
Any other questions or comments from the board members? Seeing none, I want to thank you for coming in today and giving us an update, and I look forward to seeing you again.
okay, well, thank you very much for the offer and the invitation. We really appreciate it, and thanks again for your ongoing support of North Island College and the work that we do. So.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have Alan Anderson, Training Officer, Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department, providing a statement on behalf of the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department. Please come up, Alan. Go ahead.
Wonderful. This is a hallowed hall that we meet in. I'm looking at the pictures of those who have served in the positions that you currently serve in, and I see some remarkable men and women that have occupied these chairs in the past, and I see a legacy that they have left that you all can follow. Carry on their legacy. Oh, and before my clock starts, Mayor McEwen, it's good to see you. It's good to see a friend on Zoom there. So good to see you. Oh, good to see you there too. And thank you, Vice Chair, for reminding the delegation behind me not to boo me. So delegation, follow what the Vice Chair is directing. Madam Vice Chair, members of the Board of Directors, we express our gratitude for allowing the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department to come as a delegation to your board meeting this afternoon. My name is Alan Anderson, and I am a proud member of the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department. And for the record, I am a resident of Beaver Creek at 5440 Willow Road. We would like to make it clear to the public that this fire chief position is not something the ACRD and Beaver Creek Fire have approached casually or in haste. We have a plan, and the best execution of the plan is before yourselves as members of the Board of Directors. The matter, the ACRD Board of Directors support the posting and hiring of a full-time paid fire chief for the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department. Our department fully and emphatically supports this matter, and we are asking that you support this motion, this matter. We need your help. The residents of Beaver Creek need your help. And you can help both parties by supporting this discussion as it relates to a full-time fire chief in Beaver Creek. How did we get to this matter in discussion? Even prior to the fire services review completed and printed in 2022 by David Mitchell and Associates, there existed in this and other fire departments that were led by volunteer fire chiefs an overwhelming membership consensus. There is too much expected of a volunteer fire chief. With all the regulatory requirements, board and public expectations and upholding standards of conduct within the fire service industry. And I might also add, which was part of my 33 years in the world of insurance, I might also add that when it comes to courts, the legal liability, defending oneself or an organization, it will be asked what a prudent or reasonable fire chief would have done, or what a reasonable or prudent fire chief would not do in a given situation that will be viewed. It's the position in the chain of authority, in the chain of command that is being viewed, not whether it is a volunteer fire chief or a full-time fire chief that the courts refer to. They have not said, okay, don't worry, you're just a volunteer fire chief. The same duty of care that applies to a full-time career fire chief applies to a volunteer fire chief when it comes to matters of law. Did you know that the full-time fire chief of Port Alberni and the volunteer fire chief in Beaver Creek both have the same regulatory requirements in their hall, in their communities, the same training standards, the same safety and health standards? The list goes on. I'll stop there. You got the picture. So a little snapshot. Besides what you see behind us here, our fire crew is diverse. We are members from 4 months of service to 46 years of service. We are diverse in our many occupations that span the valley. We are diverse in our family makeup. We are diverse in our cultural background. We are diverse in our ages. And we also volunteer with other community organizations. Before stating what we do, it's needful to understand a couple things. Firstly, The bylaw that sets out Beaver Creek Fire's organization, administration, and powers was not instituted by Beaver Creek Fire. The authority having jurisdiction, the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District, drafted and approved that bylaw, and we are bound by it. There is also another law that deals with the establishment of boundaries. Both can be amended from time to time as needed. They then become current and relevant documents for the fire hall. Secondly, the authorized services provided by Beaver Creek Fire, mandated through the operational criteria bylaw that we follow, by the authority having jurisdiction, the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District. Those services in the bylaw state fire suppression and all related ancillary or necessary services in connection therewith, including suppression of interface fires, technical rescue, road rescue, hazardous material responses, assistance to other emergency services, first medical responder services, assistance to other emergency responders, including fire and ambulance, and lastly, public fire education and public safety. We would like to share some statistics that cover the years included in the Fire Services Review of 2016 to 2021. These are yearly averages. They are not all the services. We've chosen a few. Average structure fires during that time. And for you that want decimals and what it actually is, I can share them later. For those of you that just want a ballpark, I'm going to tell you it's 4 and change. So structure fires, 4 and change. Chimney fires, 2 and change. Automatic aid, 9 and change. These automatic aid are structure fires serviced by Beaver Creek Fire to our neighboring communities of Sprout Lake, Cherry Creek, and the city of Port Alberni. First responder medicals, 96 and change. Again, these are yearly averages. Motor vehicle incidents and extrication, which is getting people out of vehicles, 10. For your information, in 2022, we attended 8 structure fires in Beaver Creek, 4 chimney fires, and 10 automatic aid calls to our neighboring communities, and 83 medical calls. So, to the board, you can write these highlighted words down if you wish, if you wish to feel good. We see you as, firstly, visionary. By seeing a full-time fire chief as a cornerstone moving Beaver Creek Fire forward. This is a cornerstone position. We see the board as a whole as being courageous, doing a new thing for the first time ever in Beaver Creek. You have already demonstrated your courage by hiring a full-time fire chief in our neighboring sister department of Sprout Lake. We also see the board of directors as supportive in that by hiring a full-time fire chief, our crew sees most directly that you have listened to us. And today, by your positive vote on this matter, your interest in us and those we serve. We also see the board as proactive. You are not treading water on this matter. You are swimming in the correct lane and going in the correct direction. You are moving your arms and you are kicking your feet. We, as a department, are inclusive. The actions of our volunteer firefighters benefit our residents, our businesses, our visitors, the people that come to your homes that we don't know. We will serve them, as well as our neighboring communities. Beaver Creek Fire is progressive. We, like many other fire departments that are volunteers, are unable to act as we did in the past. The only thing constant is change, and that applies to the fire service. In the last 10 years, changes in emergency service delivery have changed, and they will yet continue to change. A full-time fire chief will allow us to work through those changes, to navigate. Otherwise, the alternative is to suffocate, burden, or burn out our volunteer fire chiefs. I have two short statements as I conclude. This is from the perspective of a spouse. One time in particular, my family came from Victoria for my birthday. Just as we set the food out, the pager went off, and I thought my sister-in-law was going to cry as she'd spend hours making food for the birthday. Our friends were also coming to dinner, but they were also on the fire call. When the pager goes off in the middle of the night, it scares me out of a sound sleep. I have a hard time going back to sleep as I worry. My husband gets back, and I always ask him if he saved the day, because he makes me very happy and proud to know the guys did their best to help someone. And now gets to bed and has to still get up and go to his regular job in the morning. And a daughter shared, my dad has put his all in being the best that he can for the hall. From missing birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween, it never fails on special occasions. The pager would go off. Missed grandchildren events, the pager will ring off, and he goes. As a family, sacrifice our time with their dad, and so someone's worst day, he can be there to help. There have been many times when my children were younger, and even to this day, that they would be visiting and he would have to leave to go save someone's house or someone's mother or her child in her arms, and never once complained because of duty. My dad shows up with his crew, no matter the time, no matter the day, and he always shows up to make sure someone is safe. My dad is a full-time job, and he's on call 24/7 with the fire department, as well as the rest of his crew. There are no days off. I couldn't be more proud of my dad. In conclusion, some taxpayers have written in favor of this discussion, and some taxpayers have written against this discussion. Either way, the majority, this is emphasis, either way, the majority of our taxpayers have not said anything. They entrust the decision-making, the being informed, the being current and accurate, they leave that to this body. And they trust due diligence and the careful manner and the unhurried way that this has been approached. That is what the majority of us in Beaver Creek. Thank you for allowing our delegation to come and present and speak to you during this very valuable time in your meeting that apparently will go on for a bit today. To demonstrate that you value the emergency services provided by Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department and that you recognize our volunteer labors, our sacrifice, and our dedication, we strongly urge you to support this discussion before you in posting and hiring for a full-time paid fire chief for Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department by being proactive, progressive, supportive, courageous, visionary, and inclusive. We are proud to be Beaver Creek Fire. We are proud to serve with our neighboring communities, our brothers and sisters in Cherry Creek, Sprout Lake, and the city of Port Alberni. And we are BC proud.
Thank you, Alan, for that very passionate presentation. And I do want to thank the members of the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department for coming here today and taking time out of your busy schedule. And probably a lot of you having to take time off work to be here. But I would ask that the directors please withhold any questions until we come to 8D on our agenda. So Alan, if you don't mind sticking around for a little bit longer to take any questions, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you. No correspondence for action. We have 2 items on correspondence for information. The first one is received from Island Coastal Economic Trust, an email dated June 13, 2023, regarding funding for community and regional advisor positions across the coast. And secondly, a thank you letter from the Port Alberni Association for Community Living regarding the 2023 grant and aid funds that were awarded to them for the Pathways program. Did anybody want to speak on any of these pieces of correspondence? Seeing none, can I get a motion that Board of Directors receive items A to B for information only? Moved by Director Sparrow, seconded by Director Roth. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, request for decisions and bylaws. Firstly, we have a request for decision, bylaw number A1090-2, Board Remuneration, Expenses and Benefits Amendment 2023. And we're going to ask Wendy Thompson, General Manager of Administrative Services, to speak on this.
Thank you. So the Board of Directors adopted a code of conduct, their first ever code of conduct on April 12th of this year. Section 1612 of the code of conduct includes a reduction in remuneration to a director who is found to be in breach of the policy by a third party. So in order for us to implement this section of the new code of conduct policy, an amendment is required to the board remuneration and review, board remuneration and expenses bylaw. So attached for consideration of 3 readings and adoption by the Board of Directors is an amendment to the Board Remuneration, Expenses and Benefits bylaw. And if there's any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them.
Thank you, Wendy. Is there any questions from the board members?
I would move adoption that the Alberni Claycourt Regional District Board of Directors give first readings of bylaw A1090-2 Board Remuneration, Expenses and Benefits bylaw amendment 2023.
Thank you. Can we get a seconder to the motion? Second by Director Boyko. Any questions or comments before we call for the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Would you like to read the next one, Dr. Coots?
I would move second reading.
Could I get a seconder? Seconded by Director Cote. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Please go ahead, Dr. Coots.
I would move third reading.
Seconded by Director Roberts. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
Move adoption.
Could I get a second to that motion? Seconded by Director Sparrow. Any final questions or comments, Director Cote?
Just a comment that we make so little that I don't really think this is going to make a big difference. Thank you.
I think I remember saying that when we did our session, but thank you for that. Seeing no further questions or comments, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the ACRD Procedures Bylaw Amendment recording of votes, and Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services, is going to speak on this.
Thank you. So the report in front of you is to consider adopting an amendment to the ACRD Procedures Bylaw related to how we record votes at board and committee meetings. So this was a request that the board made at the May 10th board meeting. So the proposed amendment will change how I record votes in the official meeting minutes, and it will be done by one of the following options: carried unanimously, defeated unanimously, or when a unanimous vote is not reached, I will record the names of who voted against the motion. It is anticipated that this may take a few extra moments during board and committee meetings to look around the room and then look onto the Zoom meeting and to ensure that I've recorded the names in the minutes. So this proposed change to the bylaw was required to be notified in the we had to notify the public. We did that in the Alberni Valley News and the Westerly on June 7th and 14th. We also shared it on our website. And in addition to those legal requirements, we posted in our lobby, on social media, and we posted a hard copy in Banfield near the market. I received no public feedback on this proposed change. And so the resolutions are presented to you for consideration.
Thank you, Heather. Is there any questions or comments, Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you very much. First thing, I'd like to have the vote on the voting recorded for this vote, please. And I would like to move for the motion that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give first reading to bylaw A 1075 TAC 4, Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Procedures Bylaw Amendment 2023.
Moved by Director Boyko, seconded by Director Roth. Director Cote.
Thank you. I just want to make note that there is already a provision in our bylaw that allows for registering votes. And it seems that we're always looking for efficiencies in ways that we can speed up our time. And to me, this seems like something that we don't need. And it seems like an extra measure when we're saying to register votes on all votes. So when we open a meeting, it's okay. Do we approve the agenda? We have to register that vote now. The minutes, we have to register that vote now. It just seems to be, there has to be a better way to do this than having to register every vote. So I'm really not in favor of making things more complicated. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote. Director Coos, then Director Sparrow.
Thank you. And thank you to Director Boyko for asking for the votes to be recorded on this motion. I find this problematic as we are conducting hybrid meetings, and some of us are en route or in traveling, and my silence typically is acquiescence. I only speak up if I'm speaking negatively against a vote. When I'm silent and participating online, I don't typically go to my phone and or like tab out on my computer and raise my hand in support. So I find this problematic, and I think we're hindering ourselves when we don't need to. So those are my comments and my views. True.
Thank you, Dr. Sparrow.
When this motion first came up, it was for every recorded vote. And like Penny was saying, Director Cody was saying here, the fact is that there's a lot of votes here. This one here has 4 votes that be recorded. I'm not opposed to having the final vote in the recorded minutes for the next meeting, saying who's who, but if we do it every single time for everyone for these votes, it's going to make these meetings go a lot longer. And we've already ran into problems where we almost ran out of time due to, getting close to 10 o'clock, or other people going to meetings. So it is going to slow us down. And I don't know where the efficiency is in this first, second, or third reading if the fourth reading is going to be passed. It's going to take more time and be more problematic in that way. But if the last vote wants to go through and be recorded, I'm okay with that.
Thank you, Dr. Boyko.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. This motion is not about efficiencies. It's about openness, transparency, and accountability of the elected officials. That being said, when you go through the minutes of every regional district on the island, Port Alberni is one of the only ones, Alberni Clayoquot Regional District rather, is one of the only ones that does not record their votes for every vote on a regular basis. It's time to move into the modern era. Thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments before we call for the motion? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Motion is defeated. Okay, all opposed? Motion defeated? Thank you, motion defeated. Dr. Cote.
Thank you. There was a suggestion by our chair, Jack, of another process that could possibly work for us. So maybe staff could take a look at that. That wouldn't be so cumbersome. Thank you.
Do you remember what that was?
If I may, Madam Chair, if I recall, it was, I think it was the negative votes on the final adoptions of various matters. I'd have to connect with him again to see exactly, but it's been a few months now. He had made a comment. I don't recall exactly. We can follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will follow up on that. Director Coots.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to make a comment. It's not about, my negative vote isn't about not wanting to be open and accountable to the public. It's about ensuring that our processes can be efficient. Our staff's time is expensive. The longer we continue board meetings, it's more difficult. I'm not cognizant of my time. I'm an elected official, so I'm consistently giving more time than I should. But so let's look at the alternative so we can achieve the outcome without hindering the process. So when we look at this, I'll reach out to me and I'll be intrinsically involved in the process. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any other comments before we move on? I know this is a difficult subject. Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is Accessible British Columbia Act Requirements Update to ACRD Board, and this is going to be Heather.
Thank you. All right, so the report in front of you is related to new provincial legislation requiring us as a local government to develop an accessibility plan for the ACRD. The purpose of the new act is to establish a framework for government and organizations to work with people with disabilities and the broader community to identify, remove, and prevent barriers to accessibility. So there are many types of disabilities that need to be considered, including those that affect a person's vision, movement, thinking, remembering, learning, communication, hearing, mental health, and their social relationships. So it could be related to somebody that is blind or deaf or uses a cane or a wheelchair, is neurodiverse, has low literacy, or has a learning disability. We are required to create an accessibility plan by September 1st, 2023. And as part of that, we're also required to form an accessibility committee, which will support the development of the plan. The committee must include persons with disabilities or those that support disabilities, Indigenous peoples, diverse persons, and those with diverse disabilities. We need to consider our facilities, including the ACRD office, our airports, our recycling depot, our landfills, our washrooms, and our parks and trails. We also need to consider things like policies, our services, and our programs. It's expected that we already have some policies and plans in place that support accessibility, but we just need to collate those all together into a single plan. We are not in a position to comply with the September deadline, so I want to make that clear that we're not going to meet that. However, our work will be commenced and in process by then. So the report in front of you is for the board to direct staff to develop a project plan for the creation of an accessibility plan and committee for your consideration, and I will bring that back to the next board meeting if approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Is any questions or comments? Director McEwen.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to staff, District of Ucluelet just completed this process. And so if our staff could be of any help to your staff, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Director McEwen. That's a very nice offer. Director Cote.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation that the Alberni Claypot Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to develop a project plan for the creation of an accessibility plan and accessibility committee for consideration by the Board of Directors.
Moved by Director Cote, second by Director Sparrow. Any final questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is the establishment of a full-time fire chief for the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department. And our CEO is going to take on this topic.
Thank you. There's a report in front of the board that spans a large scope of information and process. I'm going to try and provide a bit of a summary of that verbally and then open up to any questions that may exist. On May 11th, 2022, the board officially received and reviewed the Fire Service Review. The Fire Service Review had over 40 recommendations. The recommendations helped identify specific concerns and actions that needed to be addressed. It also included considerations for how the ACRD could address the areas of concern. Both of these were underpinned with the recommendation that the ACRD develop a plan for how to address the concerns in full consideration and consultation with the individual fire departments. Examples of the language used is identified in the report. I won't go through each one of those examples, but they are there for the board's reference. Based on the deliberations of the board in 2022, staff were directed to work with the ACRD fire departments to develop an action plan and matching budget. Staff undertook outreach with the support of a professional facilitator, and discussions focused on how to support each fire department as they sought to implement the Fire Service Review within the context of their department, while also building on possible areas for regional consolidation and collaboration. The resulting plan looked at the highest risk areas first. Examples of these are occupational health and safety issues, training and qualifications, operational guidelines. The second phase is to look at mutual and automatic aid areas, bylaws, and public education. The plan considered the availability of individuals that understand the operational, technical, and cultural workings of each fire department, the availability of matching skills within the Alberni-Claycourt Regional District Office, an effective strategy for ensuring that departments and individuals involved were provided with sufficient time to advance the objectives. With the departments already stretched beyond capacity, the plan needed to focus on an allocation of resources and confirm those resources prior to the completion of the actual implementation plan. The reason for that is if we had no extra time to allocate towards achieving the plan, then the status quo was one that we would not see any advancement. There were discussions around elements such as paid on call or stipends, the provision of administrative support, but all of these fell short of achieving what the Fire Service Review objectives sought out to do. Part of the challenge, I think that is important to note, is that when we considered a paid on call for specific aspects or stipends for taking on specific aspects, or having the ACRD potentially provide admin across a larger gamut, in the absence of having the matching time within the fire department, it really became a mess to coordinate and an unreliable plan to implement, because we couldn't guarantee that with short windows, people could actually achieve what we're setting out to do. Ultimately, the recommendation that came forward was to look at a full-time position. Having a full-time position meant that somebody could coordinate the activities, could still work with volunteers in terms of implementing some of those aspects, but also had time to interface with the regional district and develop an action plan or implement the action plan that could be brought through to completion. The implementation of the Fire Service Review recommendations are both operational and cultural in nature. This type of change is complex and requires a lot of intimate knowledge about the work at hand, as well as the work that is about to be done and the collaboration with the other departments that is required. It requires quite a bit of time, intimate knowledge, and is connected to why it is that we ended up with the recommendation that we have. The fire chief is seen as the best position because that position does understand the work of all the firefighters. It understands the details of the fire department systems, their training, their culture, And the fire chief was the most knowledgeable and most effective person to lead the group of volunteers through this organizational change. During budget deliberations, the board approved the fire chief for Sprout Lake. Budget was approved as of April 1st. A budget was approved for Beaver Creek as of July 1st. And the plan for Bamfield was to do incremental increases, having the support of the 2 full-time fire chiefs to eventually then see the hiring of a full-time fire chief in 2025. At the time that the budget was approved, the Beaver Creek director also asked for additional communication outreach via an FAQ, and this was issued to the Beaver Creek community on May 30th and June 1st. The intent of the outreach was to inform the public, answer questions, to promote understanding of the services provided, the challenges faced, and the solution being advanced. Today's board report provides a copy of the FAQ. It provides answers to the additional questions that we received, and it recommends proceeding with posting and hiring of the fire chief for the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department. The recommendation is a direct result of the outreach with the fire department and volunteers who provide the community with the fire services. This was, as I said, a brief overview, and if there are any specific questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. I just remind the board members that if you do have any questions for the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department, please direct those through the chair. And can I ask that your responses, please direct those through the chair as well. So Director Roth has a question.
Yeah, I just prepared this, and it was more based on what was the information in the agenda package, which is pretty much what was talked about here, but through the chair. Thank you for the report. This is the first time that I've been provided with a plan to support hiring a full-time fire chief. When I asked for one earlier in this year, I was told the plan is to hire a fire chief, and that was that. There was nothing tangible provided. According to report, the plan to hire a full-time fire chief is still in a draft form, and that's what it says in the agenda package. The report stated that until there was and is clarity regarding how the fire departments would find the capacity to start addressing their workload, there was little value to attempting to finalize the draft plan. I disagree. There's a great deal of value in finalizing the plan. The way it works is first the plan is put together, then the plan is used to back up a request for spending approval. It doesn't work the other way around. All requests for spending approval must be backed up with a tangible plan, especially when it involves public funds. The report says that the draft plan includes 2 primary phases. First, to hire a full-time paid fire chief. Second, to advance centralization and regional collaboration in line with the 2022 ACRD Fire Service Reviews recommendations wherever possible. I'm pleased to see your plan says that the fire chief will work towards the centralization of fire protection services, and that the 2022 Fire Services Review may be a part of it. As it stands now, the service description in the Beaver Creek Fire Protection Conversion and Establishment Bylaw, E1052, does not cover the full range of service responsibilities of the fire department. The bylaw states the service is for fire protection and suppression only. The fire department also provides medical aid, road rescue, and wildland interface. Bylaw E1052 is a fundamental bylaw, and it needs to be amended to include the other services. I want to note that the agreement I made with staff at the end of March 2023 to hire a full-time paid chief hinged on the public's response. We agreed that the ACRD would do a mail-out that contained frequently asked questions, but we never agreed that the issue could not be discussed further in open public forums or otherwise. I would never give up or ignore my responsibility to gauge public opinion, nor would I assign my responsibility as an elected official to anyone else. Overall, the people of Beaver Creek want to have the opportunity to have a say in how their tax dollars are being spent. There are only 1,100 tax-paying households in Beaver Creek. Have all taxpayers been duly notified about the proposed changes? One mail-out is not enough. Moving from a volunteer model to a composite model is a big change. It's going to cost taxpayers substantially more to fund the new composite fire department. Although I'm pleased that a draft plan has been presented, it now needs to be completed. And when the people of Beaver Creek have had the opportunity to help shape that plan, through a proper consultation process and the plan is complete, I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Director Roth. We appreciate it. Did CEO or Charlie want to respond at this time, or?
Well, there's a number of different references. I think with regard to altering the bylaw behind the provision of service, the E1052, there are a number of bylaws that amend that and do allow for the full span of services that we are providing. So we are legally providing those services. I think in the fire service review, there is a recommendation around those lines. And the recommendation is that it's probably preferable to align them. And I think it's important to make note of the language that when we're talking about probably preferable, it doesn't mean that we're operating incorrectly. It just means it's tidier and more to consolidate everything into an updated bylaw. So I wouldn't want to confuse the matter of what we're doing being outside of the parameters of what we're permitted to do. Wow, there's a lot of in there. So I just want to speak to that. I think it's important. I disagree with regards to the element of the plan. The plan identifies what needs to be done. And that is clear. We're not in the practice of going through all the operational plans with the board. We talk at a higher level. We have governance decisions. We do set the budget. And I would argue that we do actually, and we have substantiated why it is that we were recommending advancing with the paid fire chief, and that the board as a body was convinced that that was the path, which is why they equipped the budget. The operational plans from there are contingent on the availability of resources. And so ultimately, it's my responsibility as staff to oversee the implementation plans. And if I don't know how much time or who I have to assign to a plan, I can't actually advance it. And so, where the line between elected officials and operations is met is at the point of governance, strategic, and budget. And the board has done that. From that point on, it becomes operations to implement and then to report back out on where we're at. But I will still hold that I cannot complete the plan in terms of actually achievable timelines in the absence of knowing what resources and the availability of those resources that I actually have.
Thank you. I have a question for Charlie. I know it's only been a couple months since we've hired a full-time fire chief at Sprout Lake, but have you seen any changes or improvements, or it might be too soon to tell, but I'd just like your thoughts on that.
It is early, and because he's coming out of being a volunteer where his time has been 365 days a year and 24 hours a day, it's making some adjustments to putting into a full work week, consolidating the hours. That's the biggest change for him. Yes, the improvement, the atmosphere of the fire department supporting the chief and whatnot, it's all there.
Thank you. Director Cote.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to staff for bringing this forward. I think that the information that's been provided has been thorough. There's a lot of information that has been collected over many years from the fire departments. Our budgets keep increasing. The reporting out, the blue book, the whatever, the training, everything has escalated over the past, over 18 years that I've been on this board. I've seen the increases of everything. The demand on our fire department, and Sprout Lake has recently just hired our paid fire chief, and I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to support my fire department, and I'm very happy to support the Beaver Creek Fire Department and the City and Cherry Creek Fire Departments as well. We do the automatic aid. I think that it's super important. I've spoke to the city during their budget deliberations in the past in support of city fire department positions saying that, you know, we rely on the city relies on the rural area fire departments as well. Have the utmost respect for people that put their lives on the line, you know, with the daily challenges of being a volunteer. What the requirements are for that is more than I could do. My husband is a Sprout Lake volunteer for the fire department there. He's not a first responder. It's not in his nature to do that. But I absolutely respect all those people that actually do that. I know that people in my community have not suffered because of the fire department being there and being on call and being there to help, whether it's fire or first responders. I think that we need to do more for our fire departments. Recent events have really showed me what it is that these volunteers face, and it's not fair in so many instances what they have to put up with. PTSD is something that we should be recognizing at this board table that happens with our fire departments, and we need to have their back and make sure that they know that. And I think that the beginning is when they're asking for a paid fire chief, I think that we need to support that. I think that that's a minimal thing. The demand on our fire departments is huge and only getting bigger. So I'll leave it at that, but I support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cote. Director Roberts.
Yeah, thank you for that, Penny. That was quite well stated. Just for terms of reference, I understand totally where Director Salen is, or CAO Salen is coming from with regards to putting everything into fruition and making it happen, the time involved. Again, to put this into context, my background is in fire service. And I went through the ranks. I was in the fire service for 33 years, in public service for over 50 years, but fire service 33. I went from a probationary firefighter to fire chief after my 33 years. And I had to deal with budgets, personnel issues, and on, and attending fires and as a scene commander and putting in a lot of extra time. The comment that Alan made earlier, if I may, with regards to time away from family, dealing with family issues, dinners lost, birthdays, kids attending their hockey or lacrosse games or whatever it happened to be, takes a toll. And I cannot rationalize having somebody as a volunteer fire chief in a growing department that has to deal with this as a volunteer, having a job and a family and doing this on top of it. To me, it's ludicrous. I also served for 11 years once I moved over the island as a director for the Arrington Fire Department. And they're going through that process right now of hiring another full-time fire chief. The question of burnout, which I've heard, is real and extremely difficult when you put people into a situation as volunteer firefighters going to scenes that are horrific. And I've seen my share of them. To put young people into it over time after time after time, PTSD certainly has become an issue. I'm not necessarily, and I think I might have mentioned this before to Charlie, that as far as the fire services review is concerned, that I'm not a total fan of the Dave Mitchell report, but I do have to say that hiring a full-time fire chief is of the utmost importance. It's the utmost importance to bring Sprout Lake, Beaver Creek, including Bamfield and Cherry Creek, under the same, if you will, automatic aid agreement, which there is, mutual aid, automatic aid, whatever it happens to be, and to be able to provide the residents of these communities with the thought that if something tragic should happen, that there's going to be somebody there to support it. As far as, and Alan mentioned something about his years in the insurance industry. For anybody that thinks that not having a full-time fire department or fire chief and having, for example, a tanker shuttle service in place, which I understand Sport Lake has, supporting all those communities, I got to tell you, your insurance, fire insurance, is going to go through the roof. The money that is being spent, as far as I'm concerned, on a full-time fire chief, according to the budget, is well worth the money. It's not that much. And all I see coming out of this is full-time is benefit. Taking the load off of an auxiliary chief and having a full-time chief is of paramount importance. It will work out all the way around for everybody. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roberts. It's nice hearing from somebody that has the experience. I'm going to change the topic a little bit and go to how important the volunteer fire departments, not just in Beaver Creek, but Cherry Creek and Sport Lake, how important they are to the community and when they volunteer for other community events. And it's not just in their own area, but the whole entire region. So that's a really important component. And I would hate to miss out on that, of what everything that the volunteer fire departments offer to the region. Is there any other comments? Director Beckett.
Thank you. And if you'll bear with me and be patient as I reflect on some notes that I've made. The last board meeting, Director Roth made some comments that were very thought-provoking for me. I don't take this matter lightly. Some of her comments I happen to agree with, that were worth exploring in my mind, and some of her thoughts and comments perhaps I wouldn't agree with. But the fact is that I valued her thoughts. It does come to ultimately, what are our options moving forward with respect to supporting our firefighters? And I guess that given the regional makeup, what we have in place, and after some discussions with Daniel, regarding the report, I guess I'm inclined to agree that the best option moving forward in my mind is to hire a full-time chief. I think today again was an opportunity to hear and receive more input from both the area director and the delegation. And Training Officer Anderson, I was pleased to see that he and the delegation, although I can't see them via Zoom, I assume there's a number of firefighters in the audience are in support of a full-time chief. And that furthermore, and I think this speaks to some of his adjectives of the board and what we represent, and that's being a visionary, and that's, making tough decisions and looking to the future. Training Officer Anderson is correct. I've said this before, that there is legislative responsibility that applies across the board, career, composite, or volunteer. And that ultimately is the board's responsibility, our responsibility, not the fire chief's responsibility, to ensure compliance in all these matters. So having all of that information at hand, knowing that yes, there are options, I don't know that I have any other choice but to support staff's recommendation in this motion. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective.
Thank you, Director Beckett. Would anybody else like to speak? Director Coots?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And through the chair, I'd like to thank Mr. Anderson for his presentation. We really appreciate and respect your opinion. Over my political career, I've been taught the value of perspectives, and you and your team have a perspective I don't. I've never been in an interface fire. I've never had to deal with the issues that you have. So when you speak, I value your perspective. I value your profession. We live in a forest. I lost two buildings to structure fires in my village when I was younger. We had volunteers then, and we did our best, but we didn't let the fire spread. So my dad dealt with that, along with the other men and women that were able to help with in those situations. They were complete losses. So I really value and respect those volunteers that I see standing there, because you put yourselves in harm's way constantly. You're an essential service. You are the front line of defense against one of humanity's greatest friends and foes at the same time, fire. It's really important that we remember and respect that. I had a few more things to say, but as I think about this more and more, I just want to hold my hands up to you, because as we face climate change, we're going to be relying on your services more and more. As we look at what has happened in other communities, we live in a forest. We're surrounded by the woods. At any given moment, the winds can change on that fire that we had just experienced, and we could be in some serious danger. So I really appreciate that. And I will be voting in support of this motion because of all the information that I've gathered, because I don't have that perspective. So what I have to do is as I sit in this position of the decision-making authority on the board, is I have to look at everybody's perspectives and to take the expert opinions of those that we have sought and go through my decision-making process. And I really just want to once again hold my hands up to our volunteer firefighters, and really appreciate that. Sure.
Thank you, Director Boyko.
Thank you very much, Chair. This comes down to basically figuring out different ways to engage with the public, whether we do a mail out or we play around on Facebook and that kind of thing. And it comes down to figuring out what the people actually want in the best manner. And I'm not sure that a mail out or fitting on Facebook is the right answer, but we need to have a way to engage the public properly and effectively to see what the people want. Thank you.
And I think we're going to be talking about that later on in development of the communications policy. So thank you for that. Any other questions or comments? Director Sparrow, you're an expert.
I'm an expert. I'm also a devil's advocate this time too. So there we go. The request for decision states the desired outcome is to maximize the long-term retention and attraction of volunteers who provide fire protection services, also included but not limited to medical aid, road rescue, wildland interface, by supporting the volunteers in addressing the areas of concern identified in the 2022 Alberni-Claycourt Regional District ACRD Fire Services Review. This report does not address how that objective is going to be reached, but it does, however, state some of the discussions identified larger contextual challenges such as the lack of rentals, lack of affordable housing for young people, limited selection of local and long-term career opportunities, etc. It also states recruitment and retention of volunteers is more challenging and demands on more time than ever. Locally, the population is aging and retiring. Residents have fewer stable long-term employment opportunities, and there are fewer affordable housing options for many working individuals and families. The pool of potential volunteers is dwindling significantly. This is an impediment to long-term retention. I don't think paying a full-time position will stop these issues. If a paid fire chief was a solution to the problem, then Cherry Creek, who has a part-time paid position, would have a full complement of firefighters, and they do not. For those of you who do not know my background, I'm the past fire chief for Cherry Creek. I'm the first part-time paid fire chief for the Valley. I did the job for 12 years. At the end of the part-time, I started with a stipend. So I know how Beaver Creek Fire Chief is paid right now. I know what the job is like and how it's being done in Beaver Creek. Doing the job after you have your regular job, after the kids and the wife have gone to bed, you're spending weekends at the hall to do catch-up. I empathize with those that have to do the job and look forward to it. The job is bigger than that. It's bigger than what it was. It cannot be effectively done after a regular job. But it is not a full-time job. Cherry Creek Water Board understood this and decided to try with a part-time position, 20 hours per week. Understand that Cherry Creek had no time and no connection to ACRD at that time. There was no fire manager to help out with the workload or help understand the regulations. Emergency response plans were made for the area by the fire chief at the direction of the board for all natural disasters. There's also other requirements that go along with being a paid chief. There are pre-fire plans, fire investigations, fire prevention. All the training requirements were done by the chief. Oops, keep going. Along with all the operational guidelines, lesson plans, all their assignments given to the fire chief by the board, including the writing of new establishment bylaws for the fire department and other bylaws. Today, it is still a part-time job in Cherry Creek, nothing more. That's all it takes to do the job. I will support a part-time paid position, as that's what the job is. This board, or this CAO has said there is a plan ahead and they need to have a full-time job, but I'm not sure what the plan is, what is required to get that plan done. The report also states that Cherry Creek has a part-time paid fire chief for volunteer firefighters. Cherry Creek is a part-time paid fire chief with on-call firefighters for structure fires. They've had this for 5 years now, and this will be the next step for the board to consider. A few years ago, the emergency department had one person. Then it was 2.4. Now it's 4, soon to be 5. In 2 years, with the inclusion of Banfield and possibly Cherry Creek, it could expand to 7, all high-paying jobs. Then this department will be the biggest, most expensive department in the ACRD. And there'll be some more asks from this department as will be the bigger expense to the ACRD. This is one department that you will never remove a position from. You maybe remove the person, you will never remove the position. It should be evident by just asking for more time to look at other options and bring a response from the fire department. I would ask the board to look at the option to fill out this job with other responsibilities or make it what it is, a part-time job. Thank you.
CAO.
They're fair comments to make, and I think it's important to reiterate the amount of work that has gone into actually come to this recommendation. In my report, I do identify the fact that this is as much operational as it is cultural, and the amount of time and hours that goes into building that is really important. And the volume of people that we currently have in Beaver Creek is approximately 25 firefighters. And what we're talking about is the introduction of one full-time to support 25 in CWMXL. I can't speak to Cherry Creek. I haven't done an assessment. I don't know the details, but what I do know is our fire departments. I do know Beaver Creek, and I do know the ACRD's organization. And one of the largest aspects of making sure that you are retaining and attracting good people is the culture you build. And the culture has to be one that people feel they can be successful. And at the core of what we're talking about is all the work, all the scenarios, and we have talked about the scenarios with the fire departments and with other fire professionals, is that we need the full-time work to build a successful environment. One where the firefighters that are giving their time feel they can be successful day in, day out on both their training and on their response. That they have time to build the classic things that have always attracted and retained volunteer fire departments, which is the camaraderie, working together and a common vision. Yeah, that's still there. But it's adapting and making sure that we're supporting those individuals as they face the different context, which I do identify and the firefighters themselves identify. It's tough to get a good paying regular job that keeps you here in town. It's even harder to have that same job that lets you leave during the day, because daytime calls are always the toughest. And so, so you can actually respond and provide service. Housing, of course, we talk about housing. We're talking about housing strategies here as well. It's a problem for people who are unhoused right now. It's a problem for people who are currently housed, employed, and still can't get into the market. These are things that we are going to talk about on the periphery, but they're very real situations that the department is facing and trying to resolve as they retain and attract firefighters. The full-time fire positions really is a position that is going to be utilized full-time and effectively full-time. And that is going to be both on the operational aspects, making sure that we're hitting those occupational health and safety issues, the pre-plan, which you identified, the operational guidelines are all key to what needs to be done. But it's also to remember that if we're going to seek long-term efficiencies, and you have to cast out beyond the next 5 to 10 years, if we're going to retain a solid volunteer base, we have to make sure that those efficiencies are actually going to work. And that's going to take a lot of time. And it's going to be an interface with the ACRD office itself. And so what we're looking at is a cultural change for the fire departments and a cultural change for the ACRD. And these positions that we're hiring are the key interface to doing that. And so I refute the statement that it's part-time. I think it's full-time. And I think the outreach and the work that we've looked at over the last 12 months and come to that conclusion supports that.
Thank you, CEO. I do agree with your statement, Director Sparrow. Fire departments are very expensive to run. It is probably the most expensive department in the city of Port Alberni, but I would hate to not have a fire department in the city. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, would someone like to make the motion that's listed on the agenda? Director Cote?
Thank you. I would request the establishment of a full-time fire chief for Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department. That motion? Sorry, I have to find it. I would recommend that, consistent with the approved 2023 budget, the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors support the posting and hiring of a full-time paid fire chief for the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department.
Moved by Director Cote, seconded by Director Roberts. Any final questions or comments before we call for the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Nobody requested it be recorded. Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. And thank you for the Beaver Creek Volunteer Fire Department for being here today. You're welcome to stay or you're welcome to go, whatever you prefer. Next on the agenda is Alberni Valley and West Coast Landfill Waste Composition Audit. We have Jenny Brunn, General Manager of Community Service, speaking on this today.
Thank you, Chair. We are looking for the board to award waste composition audit. We are looking to do a study at both of our landfills. Basically, this will look at what's being landfilled, how much of it is organics, recycling. This is timely. We normally do these every 3 years. The last one was done in I think either late 2018 or 2019, and we are just getting prepared to undertake the solid waste management plan. So this data will be really helpful as we look at what it is we should be focusing on for improved education and services. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jenny. Is there any questions from the board members? Dr. Steer?
Yeah, thank you. To be expected, I guess. I think you've answered all the questions that I had on list here. The only one was in terms of the summer audit composition study. Maybe I'll just back up quickly with the composition, and I think it was answered in the report. That audit will both be the self-haul and commercial waste will be included in that audit as well.
Jenny?
I also have to just say, my hotel room internet is sporadic. I miss about 40% of what's being said because this hotel room does not have great internet. So I didn't get the answer there, Jenny, if it did come forward.
That was a technical glitch on my side. So,
okay.
Good. But through the chair, yes. So what we'll be looking at doing, just a little more detail for you, in the Alberni Valley, we're actually what we do is we look at both South Hall and the residential collections. We split it up by that. We split it up by commercial. We even try to look at it by electoral area in the Alberni Valley. On the West Coast, there's yet another variable, which is that we have very different waste composition in the summer and in the winter. So not only will we be doing it by municipality or First Nation, so your location, and then whether you're residential or commercial, but then also we have an option to do it, and we actually have written it optional, so the total price will be no more than $55,000. But we'll look at the results because we also were doing auditing as part of the 3-stream rollout on the West Coast specifically, and we used AET, and they're just finishing up some of their waste composition results. So if we don't need to spend the extra money in order to get the detailed information we need for seasonal, we won't, but we have it in the proposal and we can proceed if required.
Great, thank you. And just to follow up through the chair, great, thank you. And a lot of that will be focusing on that waste diversion education so we can be more targeted in terms of the areas that we'll be looking at to focus moving forward. Great, perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Director Boyko.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, just wondering, are we still looking to revisit the sort and go 3-stream collection for the rural areas that was had a 83% voting favor against 2 years ago, or is that basically a dead item at this point? Thank you.
Go ahead.
Through the chair. So this is just a waste composition audit, which will provide us good information, but that leads into the solid waste management plan. So basically, step by step, we're going to be looking at where is the waste being created? Why is it being created? Beaufort is a great place, right? Because it is so rural and it's such a different waste composition. So that's part of the reason why we want to look at the waste production that's coming from those areas by region. So that data helps us inform when we're working on the solid waste management plan. And again, the solid waste management plan, we're going to be setting up those big lofty goals. What are we trying to do? Increase diversion. How can we do that? What are the options? Well, waste like the 3-stream collection in phase 3, that original work that we did, that's one way to increase and diversion, which might be appropriate for areas that are outside of the city of Port Alberni. So as we unfold and go through the solid waste management plan, we're not ruling anything out, and that is something that we can look at. But again, the more data we have, the more we can look at what options are going to be effective for us to achieve those diversion targets. But places in the very rural areas, and we've already got that information through doing that outreach, there's a lot of things that aren't going to make that the best solution for that process. But we will find out, through the solid waste management plan, what is going to be the best fit to achieve diversion targets.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Cote.
Thank you. That was loud. A couple of questions. Will we be looking at commercial cardboard? And is this already in the budget?
Through the chair. Yes, this money has been allocated in the approved financial plan. Good question. And commercial cardboard, we will only be seeing what is being landfilled. So this is just to look at what's getting hauled to the landfill that would normally be landfilled. So if we have commercial haulers, we'll be basically picking apart what goes there, and we will be saying, oh, this percentage was cardboard. But we aren't going to be looking, like we already have the data sort of separate that we tonnage out on how much commercial cardboard, say, goes through the landfill, but it's already getting diverted. So this is just to drill into what's mixed into the waste.
The commercial cardboard pickup is an issue that's happening with all of the retailers in the valley. I also want to point out that the AVICC has a special committee on solid waste management meeting tomorrow between 11 and 12:30. This was a committee that has been active in the past, and there's still over $12,000 there. and they want to know what to do with the money. And AVICC is passing on the baton. We no longer are the lead on any kind of advocacy work like this. So hoping that we have someone in place to actually attend this meeting tomorrow.
Through the chair, Paulo, our solid waste manager, is going to be attending that meeting. So thank you for highlighting that. We'll see what we get out of that. And with the commercial issues and a lot of those challenges, I believe we're also working on taking that to UBCM potentially as a resolution to try and work on providing better opportunities for commercial businesses because they're excluded from the Recycle BC stream. I think that might be where you were referring to. So thank you very much, Director Cote.
Head Director Cote.
Thank you. So I believe that there's a director from the board that is on this. Used to be John McNabb in the past. And I'm just wondering if there's a director that's on this.
Through the chair, I can speak to that, Director Cote. I believe John Jack, in the committee that was formed, John Jack was the appointed and I was the alternate, but I had I won't be able to attend, unfortunately, but I had not received any information on that. As far as I know, John Jack is on that committee and that I was alternate. But we can look that up. I see Wendy's there.
CAO.
I can follow up with John Jack after this meeting to confirm. And if we need any compliment, I'll follow up, make some phone calls. I know that I was invited. I know Paulo was invited, but I wasn't sure about the elected officials. So thank you on that front. I'll follow up quickly.
I'll have to get back to our executive administrator or coordinator and make sure that she makes the message out that there was representatives from boards as well that were supposed to be invited. And I always have to just bring up the point about my community still does not like a $3 bag and a $6 minimum. So.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions or comments, would someone like to make the motion? Director Roberts.
Sorry. All right, I'm new to this, eh? I'd like to make the recommendation that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District ACRD Board of Directors award the Alberni Valley and West Coast Landfill Waste Composition Audit Services contract to Tetra Tech Canada Inc. in the amount of $54,995 and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the Alberni Valley and West Coast Landfill Waste Composition Audit Services contract on behalf of the Regional District.
Moved by Director Roberts, second by Director Cote. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is the Alberni Valley Regional Airport OLS Cup Permit Application Update, and General Manager of Community Service will be speaking on this.
Thank you, Chair. So this report is mostly an informational update report. We recently had an AVRA committee meeting on June 6th. There was a lot of discussion. We had a delegation from Coulson, and one of the issues that's been occurring and ongoing at the Alberni Valley Regional Airport is the cutting in the OLS. So basically, when we originally had tenure over the land, there was a requirement for any of the landholders that were outside of the area that we have that still have trees in our obstacle limit surface area, that they would have to keep those trees cut so that they wouldn't interfere with our basically our approach areas. This happened at first, but it hasn't been continued, and essentially it's just an ongoing challenge for the regional district. So we need to have the trees cut at a certain height in certain areas, and a lot of that area is outside our existing long-term tenure. So over the years, we've applied for different tenures. We had challenges getting a long-term tenure, which is what the province would like us to have. And it is frustrating because of this process, and it simply is a matter of getting these trees cut. This is become a heightened issue with the recent fires, and it's just highlighted the importance that the regional airport has for the community as far as flights going in and out. on a beautiful clear day, luckily, we don't have, this doesn't impact flights, but if there's any bad weather or at night, because we don't have that area cleared in like outside of our tenure area, it can reduce the chance for a flight landing. So we want to address it. We want a long-term solution. In the fall, we had put in an application for 15 years, which we hope will be successful in getting support and moving forward. And we hadn't gotten an update from the Ministry of Forests, so we did follow up with a meeting after the committee meeting, and we had a very productive discussion on a staff level. We agree that this is a very high priority, and they're going to work with us to basically move this forward as quickly as possible. So we have a plan in place to move that forward, and for the most part, we wanted to make sure that we're providing this update to the board, the community, the committee, to say where we're at and our next steps. We also added in a very broad resolution. We've already had a resolution from the board for applications in the past, and this one really just is to ask the board to support all of our short-term and long-term applications for this moving forward in case we have to do another short-term application or another variance happens. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions from the board members? Seeing none, would someone like to make the motion, please? Director Cote.
Thank you. I've moved the recommendation that the ACRD Board of Directors support short-term and long-term applications to the Ministry of Forests for tenure on Crown land adjacent to the Alberni Valley Regional Airport for the purpose of managing the obstacle limitation surface.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Director Cote, second by Director Coots. Any final questions or comments? Director Boyko? Are you?
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you, Chair. Anything we can do to help support our airport and the fact that it has had an extreme amount of use in the past couple of weeks, and we'll slowly be losing all our scheduled flights, and they'll be back to not publicly useful airport too much anymore. But as someone that actually had to fly into Port Alberni in the past couple of weeks, anything we do to make our airport better would be good. So I support this. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank goodness we did have the airport. Director Coots?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And in light of the past director's comment, is there anything that proves our case to advance the improvement of our airport? I know scheduled service is part of the issues of why we couldn't continue from an aerodrome to an airport. So I apologize if this was brought up at the Havre committee meeting that I missed, because I had 5 competing interests, one of which I had a speaking role at, so I had to put everything else on hold, so apologies.
Can you respond to that, Jenny?
I really appreciate the support, and we hear that over again and again from both the committee and the board, and we really appreciate that. In this specific instance, I think we do have a path forward on a staff level, and so I think we're good and we know what steps to move forward. We will continue to, move on the strategic plan that was developed for the airport and all the objectives, and hopefully look forward to seeing everyone at the next committee meeting, which I think we just sent out will be in late August.
Thank you, Director Cote.
Thank you. I've recently been in conversation with 2 of the airport users, separate, and they're both interested in expansion at the airport. One of them is from Colson, and the other one is private flyers that are interested in creating possible service there. So I think that this would be the silver lining of our highway shutdown.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next is Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee recommendations. Jenny, can you speak on this, please?
I can. This is also follow-up from one of our committee meetings, the Beaver Creek Water Committee meeting. We discussed a number of issues, and there was one item that came up that was a request basically to look at different options for meter reading. Currently, we read our meters quarterly, and we wanted to see if there would be, what would be the costs and value for doing more frequent meter reading, like monthly reading. Also, a lot of discussion sort of developed the idea of looking at different billing options and different sort of rate structures, because right now we bill, you get a certain amount of water for a certain amount of money, and there is other models out there like at the City of Port Alberni where you pay a fixed rate, but then you also pay for all of the water that you use. These different methods have pros and cons. So we have put together a staff report, and there will be time involved to do this investigation, but we're happy to do so. And we're asking the board to recommend that we proceed with doing this research report that will take, I believe, 10 hours for the to investigate about moving to monthly reads, and then about 20 hours to look at the alternate billing options.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Director Roth.
I'd like to move that the Alberni Clayoquot Board of Directors direct staff to research the cost of monthly meter reads. Can I put them both in one motion?
I think they're separate motions.
Oh,
Are you second? Yeah. Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Cote. Any final questions or comments? Director Sparrow.
Are these meters at Beaver Creek mainly done by radio waves? They're not like the guy who's on the street picks them up. And wasn't there an option one time to be able to put a tower somewhere and pick up all the information without driving around? Or do you know anything to that?
Through the chair, they are currently radio read meters so that we can drive around, and there's only a few that will get missed if, say, there's a vehicle parked on top of it. But then we also usually every quarter will have the ones that are sort of like outliers, and we'll go back and actually physically walk up to it and read it to make sure, because there are sometimes glitches and it sends out weird numbers. The towers is an option, and it's something we could investigate. From back 15, 20 years ago when I looked at it, I think a tower itself is $20,000. Usually, like, depending, unless you're a large, very dense area, it doesn't have the return on investment, but we can look at that again as we look at different meter reading options.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Director Roth, would you like the next motion?
yes, I move that the Alberni Clayoquot Board of Directors direct staff to investigate alternate billing and rate options for the water system.
Moved by Director Roth, second by Director Sparrow. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is the 2022 Statement of Financial Information. Could we get Terry Fawn, Chief Financial Officer, to speak on this, please? Hi, Terry.
Hi there. So today I'd like to present the 2022 Statement of Financial Information. It is built with the audited financial statements that the board approved in April. And then in addition, there's a number of schedules that are required by the Local Government Act to be included and submitted to the ministry by the end of June. These include the schedule of remuneration and expenses, as well as the schedule of payments to suppliers. So just looking for the board's approval today. And once we get this approved, we will upload it onto the website as well and submit it to the ministry.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Terry? Seeing none, would someone like to make the motion? Director Roth? Thank you. Could I get a seconder to the motion? Moved by Director Roth, second by Director Sparrow. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next, we have planning matters. The first one is RC 23003 by Allison Lepsajan, 2401 Grant Avenue, Long Beach. And Alex will be speaking to this.
Thank you, Chair Haggard. This is a rezoning application, as you heard, for 2401 Grant Avenue in the Millstream area of Long Beach. The property owners have applied to rezone to cottage residential RC2 district to allow for the construction of a house and up to 4 cottages on the 2.7 acre lot. The proposal complies with the residential use policies in the South Long Beach OCP and is consistent with a number of other cottage residential properties in that area. Staff recommend that the board proceed with the rezoning without holding a public hearing. as it complies with the OCP. The Long Beach Advisory Planning Commission met on June 20th, where they passed the motion to concur with that staff recommendation. Staff have presented the recommendation for the board to consider the rezoning application at a future date, and that the public notice be given in accordance with Section 467 of the Local Government Act, which includes a mail out to neighboring residents and property owners within 100 meters, as well as 2 notices in the newspaper and a sign placed on the property. We're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Alex? Director Roberts, would you like to lead the motion, please?
I would, that the Board of Directors consider first reading of bylaw 1477 and 1478 at a future date, and that notice be given in accordance with Section 467 of the Local Government Act. Further, that the Board of Directors confirm that adoption of bylaw 1477 and 1478 is subject to A, confirmation from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner that the property is capable of accommodating on-site sewage disposal for a single-family dwelling and up to 4 cottages. And B, confirmation of adequate water on-site to service a single-family dwelling and up to 4 cottages. And C, meeting the technical referral agency requirements.
Thank you. Could I get a second by Director Boyko? Any questions or comments? Director Boyko.
I did have a question there too, in addition to it. So in the plan, they say they want to build a house and a cottage, but everything is set up to build a total of 1 house and total of 4 cottages when they're done. So I'm glad that the comments and requirements are set up for the whole entire 4 cottages. So I think everything is good that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Director Steer.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. Understanding that I'm not a voting member, I'm curious with the TUP application process in general. And in this particular case, I may have missed it in the report. Maybe Alex could clarify. Often the TUPs for the purpose of eventually a rezoning application. Is there at this time a rezoning application, and that'll apply to the next bunch that are TUP renewals? Is there, and this could be answered for all of those, is there a bridge to zoning in this particular case in all of those that are being brought forward?
Please answer, Alex.
Good Chair, thank you, Director Steer. There is the cottage residential zoning is residential focused first, requiring the house, and then the cottage are additional use, where the temporary use permit process for short-term rentals allows for that short-term rental as the primary use. We don't quite have a bridge yet in zoning that we'll consider what happens after the expiry of the TUPs. As you'll see later in the agenda, there are 3 renewal applications for temporary use permits. We don't have an easy tool to deal with that in zoning yet. We are expecting some new information from the province with new legislation coming in the fall. But in the absence of that, the best mechanism to deal with the short-term rental specifically is that temporary use permit process.
Right, and if I may have a follow-up through the chair. Yeah, in terms of that mechanism, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there will be a development zoning bylaw that would encompass vacation rentals coming through the ACRD at a future date?
Mike, please go ahead.
I think that's something that can be considered. One of the things that we will be embarking on is starting an OCP review for all of the OCPs in the electoral areas. And one of the things we're looking at is housing. And when we started the TUP process, there wasn't really the housing crunch that there is today. And I think one of the things we want to talk about in each of the communities is with short-term vacation rentals, every short-term vacation rental is a residential either house or a unit that isn't available for permanent full-time residents. And I think that's something that needs to be factored in, and before the ACRD embarks on looking at zoning vacation rentals. I think we need to look at it in the context of housing and how best to accommodate that. And there's certainly some options, and we would include that in part of the OCP reviews.
Right, and thank you. And just Just to follow up, the reason for these comments is, as you may know, in the district of Tofino, some of the issues around vacation rentals and how that affects housing supply. It's an issue we're still looking at to this day. So just as a preemptive to understand that it is much more complex. And I think you've nailed it in terms of the housing supply issue and one of the tools that we may have available to look at it very closely when we move forward on those. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have been in discussions with Tofino staff around some of those types of things as well, and sort of want to learn lessons from other areas. So that's important. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is TUP 18012 Taylor and Uher, 1430 Port Albion Road, Long Beach. And Alex, can I get you to speak on this, please?
Thank you very much. Yeah, as I mentioned, this is the first of 3 temporary use permit renewal applications that we have on the agenda to be considered in the Long Beach area. One of the amendments to the South Long Beach OCP that was considered as part of the minor OCP amendments for the zoning bylaw review project was a change to allow for temporary use permits to be issued for up to 3 years rather than 2 years in that OCP area. This OCP amendment was adopted by the board in April, and the TUP renewal applications are now ready to be considered by the board with the ability to issue for up to 3 years. This property in particular is located at 1430 Port Albion Road in the Port Albion area. The TUP is for the rental of a 1-bedroom cabin on the property that's about 2 acres in size. The owners reside on the property in a separate house, and the TUP for the short-term rental was originally issued in 2018. The Long Beach APC supported the renewal application, and staff recommend that the regional district proceed with the neighbor notification process at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Director Roberts, would you like to read the motion?
Absolutely. The recommendation is that the board of directors consider issuing a 3-year renewal of a temporary use permit, TUP 18012, subject to neighboring properties being notified as per Local Government Act S 494.
Can I get a seconder on the motion? Second by Director Cote. Any final, Dr. Cote?
Thank you. So this property was in the area that could only have a 2-year renewal in the past. I'm wondering, the question would be through the chair to staff that, is there a way to extend that first 2 years so that they end up with 6 at the end? Thanks.
That's a good question, Alex.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. There's no formal way to extend the first 2 years, but I will highlight what we've done is these applications, the 3 that are presented for you here, and there's a couple more renewal applications that are coming, have been applied for some time now. So this one in particular, they came to us early at the expiry of their permit, and we were in the process of working through the OCP amendments for the South Long Beach OCP. So we advised at the time that we had no concerns with the continued operation as long as there was no complaints. And then once the amended OCP was adopted, then we would be proceeding under the 3 years. So there isn't a way to retroactively add a year, but in effect, staff took a lighter approach on these where there were no issues, and now we're in a position where we can formally issue it again for 3 years if the board wishes to.
Dr. Roberts.
Just further to that, through the chair to Mr. Dyer. So this would be their second TUP, and beyond this, what happens?
We don't have a firm game plan for that yet. So beyond this, that's where we need to go back to the community, as Mike said, that and have the conversations with the community about how we deal with short-term rentals moving forward, and what the impact that has on housing. And we look forward to completing that work ahead of the expiry of these temporary use permits, if that's the case, because I know that things have changed since the board adopted that TUP policy in the past, and it's worthwhile revisiting both with the board and the community, I think.
Great, thank you for that.
Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is TUP 18019 McDonald 70 Sutton Road, Long Beach. And Alex, will you be speaking to this piece?
Thank you. This TUP renewal application is for 70 Sutton Road. As you heard, this one's also in the Port Albion area. Property is 2.3 acres with an existing house that has an attached accessory dwelling unit. The property owners reside in the main house and have been renting the suite under the short-term rental TUP since 2019 in this case. There have been no concerns raised by the neighbors throughout the operation of this rental, and the Long Beach APC supported the application, and staff recommend at this point that the regional district proceed with the neighbor notification process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Director Roberts, would you like to read the motion?
Will, is there any concern about chickens at this residence? This is an inside joke, sorry. Yes, I'd like to make the recommendation that the board of directors consider issuing a 3-year renewal of temporary permit TUP 18019, subject to neighboring properties being notified as per Local Government Act S9494.
Thank you. Could I get a seconder? Seconded by Director Cote. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is TUP 19013 Maltby 244 Albion Crescent, Long Beach. Alex.
Thank you. This is the third renewal application. This property is in the Millstream area of Long Beach. Short-term rental TUP was issued for the duplex on this property in 2020. The duplex is rented as one single unit to one group at a time, and the owners have caretakers who manage the site. Again, with this one, no concerns have been raised by the public throughout the operation of this rental, and the Long Beach APC considered this application at the meeting last week and passed the motion to support the renewal as presented. At this point, staff recommend that the board proceed with the neighbor notification process to gather that public input before making a final decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roberts. Would you like to read the motion?
Yes, that the board of directors consider issuing a 3-year renewal of temporary use permit TUP 19013, subject to neighboring properties being notified as per Local Government Act S494.
Thank you. Could I get a seconder? Moved by Director Roberts, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any final questions or comments? Director Cote.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm gapping out here. Is this TUP 19013? This is the duplex dwelling? So questions about that. So both sides are being temporary use now? Were we only allowed one before, or?
I'd be happy to answer that. No, it would be rented as one unit. So only one group at a time. Both sides could be rented as to one group if it's larger, but it wouldn't be two individual rentals happening at the same time. That makes sense. It's only one group. So it's all rented as one unit.
Sorry to go on about this, but I remember the conversation around it in the past, that there's two owners, there's different owners for the properties. So we had said that one or the other could rent. So how do we know that only one is being rented or whatever?
So in this case, there's only one owner to the entire property. It's owned by the same family. They're not separated by strata or anything like that. So it's one owner that owns a house that's split into two duplexes, and they do their long-term plan that they mentioned at the APC meeting was to retire into the one side and either rent out the other side and make it available to their kids. But it's all owned by the one family. The temporary permit is issued to John and Joanna Maltby, and they would be the ones operating it as one unit.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. And this is where Director Sparrow leaves. Okay, on the agenda is DVE 23003 Redmark Ventures Limited 5432 Bigwood Road, Beaver Creek. Alex, can you speak to this, please?
Thank you. This is a development variance application now in the Beaver Creek area. The property owners are applying to reduce the side and the rear yard setback for an accessory building from 15 feet to 3 feet to allow for the completion of a 280 square foot garage. This is a smaller residential lot with fairly restrictive rural zoning setbacks. If the property were located within a residential zone, the siting of the garage would comply with the bylaw. The Beaver Creek APC supported this variance application at their last meeting on June 12th, and staff do recommend that the application move forward to the neighbor notification process. And we'll also highlight that the application will be referred to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, as well as they will need to determine whether they will require a setback variance for the laneway at the rear of the property that provides access. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Cote.
Thank you. So it looks like this is already built.
It is partially constructed. Yeah, you can see in the pictures there, they had applied for the building permit, and they were under the assumption that a previous variance that had been issued for the house also applied to the accessory building. Through the review of the building permit application, we highlighted that that variance did not apply in this case, and there was an issue. And at that point, they stopped construction and applied for the variance. And here we are. Thank you.
Director Cote.
Thank you. So a couple questions. So do they have to pay more now for their building permit? And when someone has a variance on a property line, it's only for one structure? Or because I thought that I have a variance on my property and I thought it was the whole length of it. Just wondered. I'm not building anything, but I.
The address again? Just kidding. Thank you. Both great questions. So there is if you begin construction before a building permit is issued, you do pay double the building permit application fee. So that would be the case in this example. And then with respect to the variances, we often word our variances specific to the construction that's happening at the time. There may be there's always an opportunity to issue a blanket variance that would reduce that side yard from 15 to 3 feet in all cases. In this case, when the board had considered the variance, I think back in 2017, it was specific to the placement of a house, and the garage was not contemplated at that time.
Thank you, Director Roth. Would you like to read the motion?
Sure. That the Board of Directors consider issuing development variance permit DVE 23003 subject to meeting technical referral agency requirements and neighboring properties being notified as per Local Government Act Section 499.
Thank you. Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Cote. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. We'll just wait for Director Sparrow to come back into the room. Next on the agenda is the rezoning application for 6399 Walker Road, Beaver Creek, and this will be Alex as well.
Thank you, Chair Haggard. Again, rezoning application for property, as you heard, in 6399 Walker Road. The property owners intend to rezone the 4-acre property to RA3 in order to accommodate a 3-lot subdivision. The rezoning complies with the policies and objectives of the Beaver Creek OCP, and as such, staff are recommending that the board proceed without the public hearing and that the regional district receive public input through the neighborhood mail out, newspaper ads, and sign placed on the property. Beaver Creek APC supported the rezoning as presented and supported the board proceeding without the public hearing process. If there is any correspondence received during the public input that indicates that the regional district should have a more thorough neighborhood conversation through a public hearing, the board still has the option to delegate that public hearing at that time. I just want to highlight that. So I think it's an important fact. If there is limited feedback or no concerns, the alternative public input allows for a more streamlined and efficient application process, which is the intent. So at this point, staff recommend that the board consider the rezoning application at a future date and that public notice be given in accordance with section 467 of the Act. We're happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Dr. Roth?
I know the area really well, and I'm comfortable with option one, that the Board of Directors consider first reading of bylaw P1474, Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw at a future date, and that notice be given in accordance with section 467 of the Local Government Act.
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Cote. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Go ahead, Director Roth.
That the Board of Directors, or I move that the Board of Directors confirm that adoption of bylaw P1474 is subject to meeting technical referral agency requirements.
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is RF 22011-0499369 BC Limited, Lot 1, Old Nanaimo Highway, Cherry Creek. And that is Alex as well. You've been very busy.
Thank you. So this rezoning application is for a small portion of a 52-acre parcel located at the junction of Old Nanaimo Highway and Man Road in the Cherry Creek area. The area that would be rezoned to RA3 district is a 1.2-acre panhandle portion located outside of the AOR. And the intention is to subdivide this 1.2-acre portion off the larger property. The new residential lot would be consistent with the smaller acreage lots that we have in the area fronting onto Old Nanaimo Highway. The Cherry Creek OCP designates this portion of the property as residential use, which supports the rezoning application and the proposed subdivision. The Cherry Creek APC considered this application at the meeting on June 19th, where the APC passed the motion to support the rezoning as presented and for the board to proceed with the rezoning without a public hearing. And again, at this point, staff recommend that the board consider first reading at a future date and that public notice be given in accordance with the Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Any questions? Dr. Sparrow, would you like to read the motions, please?
That the Board of Directors consider first reading of bylaw P1472, Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw at a future date, and that the notice be given in accordance with section 467 of the Local Government Act.
Moved by Director Sparrow, second by Director Roth. Any final questions or comments? Saying none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Please carry on, Director Sparrow.
And that the Board of Directors confirm the adoption of bylaw P1472 is subject to confirmation from a registered on-site wastewater practitioner that the property is capable of accommodating an on-site sewage disposal at a minimum of 0.06 acre density. Approval from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure as the property lies within 800 meters of a controlled access highway and meeting technical referral agency requirements.
Thank you. Thank you. Moved by Director Sparrow, second by Director Roth. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Next on the agenda is RT 23005 zoning bylaw text amendment for accessory dwelling units, all areas. Text amendment report in bylaw 1473. And Mr. Erg, General Manager of Planning and Development, will speak on this.
I think Alex needed a break. So the purpose of this zoning text amendment is to standardize all of the accessory dwelling unit minimum lot sizes to to a 1 acre minimum. Currently, it's different in the Long Beach OCP area. They're 2.5 acres. And to increase the floor area to 90 square meters, which is 968 square feet. So again, in all of the OCP areas except Long Beach, it was 80 meters was the maximum, and in the Long Beach area, it was actually 70 square meters. So just standardizes that, as well as there was this relates to what an old building code requirement. If it was an accessory dwelling unit or a suite in the home, it could be no more than 40% of the total square footage of the home. So if somebody wanted to build a 900 square foot home, they could only have 40% of that as an accessory dwelling unit. So the building code doesn't have that stipulation anymore, and really in staff's opinion, that doesn't make sense. So if somebody wants to have a 900 square foot home and a 900 square foot accessory dwelling unit, that seems like a really reasonable approach. So that would also be removed. So the board did consider this amendment on May 24th and resolved to proceed with a section 467 notice, which is no public hearing. So there were ads placed in the newspapers in both the Westerly and the EV News. And in addition, a bulk mail-out was sent out to the Alberni Valley, and direct mail-out was sent out to Long Beach, Bamfield, as well as the Franklin River area, which is just south of Port Alberni, as they don't have access to the bulk mail. There was one email that is attached to this late item, as late correspondence that was received June 26th, requesting that a CD zone in the Long Beach area be included as part of that. So that wasn't the intention of this amendment. The comprehensive development or CD zones are site specific, and this CD zone that's being referred to does apply to a number of property owners in the area. So at this stage, staff would recommend proceeding with the bylaws written, but we are doing, again, going back and looking at the OCP and the zoning bylaw, and certainly can incorporate that and reach out to this property owner that contacted us, but also the other property owners in the area, before we would recommend any changes made and get their feedback. That's certainly something we can look at in the future. And we're recommending that the board proceed with 3 readings at this stage, and then it would come back at the July board meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mike? There is a question period at the end for spectators. Dr. Cote.
Thank you. I had talked to Mr. Erg about lot size being something that we have been asking about at Sprout Lake. So it explained that it was different.
I'm happy to
ahead, Mike.
expand on that a little bit if you like. Yeah, so Director Cote had asked about, reducing the minimum lot size. And that's certainly something that can be done. That requires updates to all of the official community plans, as well as a required public hearing. So really, I see this as the first step. So with the direction the board's taking with the updated zoning bylaw, this is an area that is, I guess, see as a simple fix, and we have a lot of property owners waiting for this change to happen. There's also a number of people that have contacted us about having properties that are less than 1 acre, but that does take a more, there's more complexities, more involvement in that, and we will include that as part of the housing questionnaires as we do the outreach around the zoning bylaw and the OCPs. And I'm happy to expand further if there's questions.
Thank you. Just to the lady in the pink, I just want to let you know that on the agenda, there's an area at the end of the meeting for questions from the public, because I saw that you had your hand raised. So we'll make sure we call on you at the end. Any other questions for Mike? Would someone like to read the motions? Director Cote?
Can I say no again?
I'm sorry. I was looking at Director Roth. Did you want? Okay. It's been a long afternoon. Go ahead.
I move that bylaw P1473 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot zoning text amendment bylaw be read a first time.
Someone like to second the motion? Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Sparrow. Any final questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Please go ahead.
A second time?
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Roberts. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Please go ahead.
And a third time.
Moved by Director Ross, second by Director Roberts. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, so next on the agenda is development procedures and fees bylaw P1480 2023 all areas. Request for decision and bylaw P1480, and Mike will be speaking to this.
Thank you. So this is a proposed new development procedures bylaw. Staff have drafted this based on the recommendations from the Electoral Area Directors Committee. And I'll just summarize the changes that are made to the current development procedures bylaw. So the purpose is to delegate all development permits to the CAO and the GM of Planning and Development. Currently, environmental and hazard area development permits are delegated to the CAO and not to the GM of Planning and Development. And development permits that are forming character in commercial, industrial, and multifamily go to the board. And so this would delegate all development permits, and just to help speed up the process around those. There is also updated fees, and we can touch on that and answer questions in a bit. And then there's also changes to sign requirements. So the sign requirements currently are, really just a 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 17 notice that is really hard to read, and that's posted 10 days generally before the public hearing. This change would require a 4x8 sign, so about a sheet of plywood size, and that sign would be posted within 30 days of the property owner making application. So there'd be good notice that there's an application on the property. Similar, the example in our community is Port Alberni has that requirement. You will, maybe have seen these types of signs in other areas. And really the purpose would be to let anybody that drives by neighboring properties know that an application has been made. They can reach out to ACRD planning staff, and we can provide that update. They may be up for a couple of months in some instances. And then some other changes is the other thing I wanted to highlight. One of the things that we did talk about at the Electoral Area Directors was delegating minor development variance permits, but there's some additional work required on staff to prepare some guidance and guidelines for when and how that could work. So that will come to a future meeting. There are some other minor changes presented, and I will just summarize them. So Section 5 permits the delegation to the CAO and GM, as I mentioned. Section 7 permits extensions. So Section 7 is more of a cleanup because all development permits will be delegated to staff. There's some changes there, and delegates a 1-year extension of the development permit to the general manager of planning and development. Section 11 is around public notification requirements when a public hearing isn't held, and the notification requirements when a public hearing is held. We just wanted to change the email just because we were running into want to be able to designate a specific public hearing email and not be tied to the planning department email specifically. To remove faxes, we actually don't receive faxes for any public hearings or notices we send out. So just taking that out there and removing that. The sign requirements that I already mentioned. And then the increase in fees and I do want to note that the fee increases proposed are significant. Some of these fee changes have not changed in 25 years, so they're low. And so the idea of the fee change, while it is significant, it is to reflect more of a user pay system. And it won't be a total user pay system, developer or property owner pay system, but certainly moving towards the applicants who will benefit from the application paying for a reasonable share of that. The staff recommendation is that this bylaw be receive all its readings and be adopted today. If the board wishes, they could proceed with 3 readings and direct staff to provide some notification to the community prior to bringing it back for adoption in July. That is one of the options that's highlighted. So I'll stop there and answer any questions anybody has. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that update. Any questions from Mike? Director Cote?
Thank you. So these increases are significant. So it looks to me that a short-term vacation rental is going from, I think it was 600, now it's 600 plus 500, so that's $1,100. That's quite a big jump. I'm not sure what the zoning amendment for cottage seasonal residents vacation rentals was, but it's 3,000 plus 500 per new lot. Amendment for guest house or duplex, 2,000 plus 500 new lot. These are significant. Public hearing or statutory public meeting, $1,000 plus 900 advertising and notice. I understand there's costs associated with things, but these are pretty significant. I'd be willing to make a motion for the recommendations, but only to the 3rd reading at this point so that we could understand these changes a little better. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike?
With regards to the public hearing notifications and the advertising, look at those and generally that's about what the cost it is for the ACRD to do that, to hold the public hearings, and then the advertising costs. Those summarize what those costs are. So local government and regional districts are not allowed to make money off of this. So, the most we can charge is the cost of doing the development. And I guess I would highlight that as we look at rezonings, for example, when we do a lot of 2, 3, 4, 5 lot subdivisions, there's a significant value change in there, and the cost to the ACRD doesn't change to process an application. It's really about who should pay those costs, and that's again what's presented is that it's the people that are getting the benefit with the increased densities, for example, in that. Otherwise, it is the taxpayers in general subsidizing those applications. But again, it's the wish of the board on how you would like to proceed. I just wanted to highlight some of those things. Thank you.
Mike, was any kind of analysis done or comparables done with other regional districts as how our fees compare?
Yeah, there was. We did look at other regional districts and areas within the vicinity, and some are lower than was proposed. We were really low. Some are significantly higher. Going through them as well, and wanted to look at this and looked at what our costs were and what's reasonable, like what's the outcome of each application. So, for example, development permits are at a really low cost. I mean, when somebody gets a development permit, it's to sometimes it's to clear land, build a house within a sensitive area, build a dock, if they're on the water. So it's to look at some sort of cost recovery. With regard to vacation rentals, while they are significant, most of those, the cost of applying for a 3-year STR, that is probably less than a week's rent that somebody's realizing on those vacation rentals. So that's it is a big jump. Again, it was a matter of how the board wishes to fund these development applications.
Thank you. Next, we have Director Steer, then Director Boyko. Go ahead, Director Steer.
Thank you. Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, and directed, the question is directed, and maybe it's not even so much a question, it's in the part where electoral area directors recommended the development permits, including form and character, the CAO and GM of planning. I'm just curious if I didn't attend that, and I apologize, I didn't see the minutes for that. If it would be possible for staff to forward the dates of that, and I can look it up myself. I'm just curious as to why the electoral area directors thought it was expedient to delegate those to staff. I don't know if that's possible to be able to forward that to me, just for my own curiosity. We've gone through the same process, and I was curious as to why the electoral area directors were in favor of that.
Can someone make a note and pass that on? Thank you so much. Director Boyko?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This brings up a conversation we had about 2 months ago with regard to mattresses going to the landfill / sort and go center, where the cost went from $20 to $23, and people were concerned that mattresses were going to get dumped in the bush as opposed to going to the sort and go center. Now we're trying to raise the cost, sometimes 50%, sometimes 100%. Some of the costs are going up 200-300%. As someone that just went through a rezoning process themselves, there is a benefit to it potentially in the future. However, we want to encourage legal people redeveloping their property as opposed to just building things and forcing them into, oh, I can't afford $3,000 for a building permit and all the other stuff to go along with it. So I'm just going to build it and hope no one sees it. So I just want to make sure that the cost increases are not going to be forcing people to do sub-legal things to avoid these costs. Thank you.
Did you want to respond to that, Mike, or?
I mean, I think that's, it's a fair comment. There are other options. We could look at a staged approach to increasing the fees. One of the things the board had talked about is the timeline around these. And as you can see from this meeting, we've certainly we're conscious of that and wanting to move applications forward. So we can do that. And then, specifically around the things that we're looking at are generally development related. So whether that is buildings, Director Boyko, referenced a cottage residential type rezoning application where there isn't, necessarily a subdivision down the road on that. But there is the opportunity to build, additional dwellings or cottages and realize revenue from that. That's generally why people are doing that. But the majority of these, relate to rezoning applications. One of the things we had looked at was, on bigger ones, building in some the potential number of lots. So a 2-lot subdivision and a rezoning application is again a lot simpler to deal with. There's some basic things that go into it. But then if there's $500 per new lot, if somebody's coming with a rezoning application for a 30-lot subdivision, potential subdivision down the road, that there's more goes into it that can be factored in. Currently, that's around a $500 application. So, but certainly if the board wants to look at other options or look at staging some of this, that's certainly something we can bring this back.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Director Roth?
Yeah, I'd like to look at staging and perhaps implementing, on a scale over a number of years or a couple of years.
Would you like to make that into a motion?
Yeah, I move that.
Thank you.
I move to, let's see here, because it can't be this. I move that the development procedures and fees bylaw be relooked at and the fees be changed to move up in increments over, I don't know what would be a fair period of time, like over 5 years, or I don't know.
I think staff can maybe, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and so, I mean, this could be it really is what's the board's objective. Certainly my understanding as we approach this was that the these fee increases would go towards supporting the additional staff that have been hired on to deal with the increased development applications, so that isn't put onto the other taxpayers who aren't doing development. But we could, stage it however the board wants. But if it's over 5 years, we're not going to realize that change. If it's over, the balance of 2023, then that has an impact. If you look at 50% of these changes now, and the other 50%, you say in January 2024, that's I'm just throwing some things out there. Again, it's up to the board and your objectives, but certainly my understanding was that the fee increases would change, and the public hearing and notice requirements. There's significantly more now, especially as we're doing hybrid meetings, and the sign requirements. I think are something that's really important. I've certainly heard on a number of occasions that neighboring property owners and residents didn't feel they were notified. So this sign goes along. It's easy to miss the little signs that we've been using all of these years. It's those big 4x8 signs are a lot easier to see. So, we can certainly bring something back with amendments as the board wishes for the next board meeting.
Thank you, Mike. I'm a firm believer in whoever uses the service should pay for it. I don't believe that I should be subsidizing it. So, but first we have Director Beckett, and then Director McEwen, and then Director Steer. Go ahead, Director Beckett.
Thank you. Further to the effort by Director Roth to propose a motion, I'll go back to Director Boyko. I would agree with Director Boyko that we don't want to drive things underground. We don't want to have people not want to comply. We should be encouraging them. I also agree with you, Madam Chair, that we need to ensure that when we look at services, they should pay for themselves, as opposed to, the all taxpayers paying for something that some person is going to benefit by. So, getting back to the motion that Director Roth is working on, I would prefer to support a motion that simply says to have staff come back. They've heard the board, you've got some perspective from the board. I think we're all agreeing that it's a big increase. So the next meeting in July on the 26th, if you came back with a report that we could perhaps consider, rather than putting this off, I recognize that you want to move ahead. So I don't know, Madam Chair, if Director Roth could work with my comments and incorporate something. I'll leave it up to you, Director Roth, and the chair.
You got enough there, Heather, for a motion?
No, I actually don't. I'm confused. I have Director Roth's motion, which was that the development procedures bylaw be modified and fees be adjusted upwards in increments over 5 years. And then Director Beckett was to bring back another report at the next board meeting, but I just don't understand the change.
Director Roth.
I can withdraw my motion, and perhaps Director Beckett, we can use what he said for a motion.
Does that work for you, Heather? CEO.
If I may, none of the motions were seconded yet, so we don't have to withdraw anything. We're still crafting. So, I think my understanding is from both the resolutions that were proposed is reducing the impact, understanding the impact in terms of cost recovery and staffing, and then coming with a recommendation on how it could be staggered, so that we can implement something that isn't going to create a disincentive and will clearly identify the impacts of increase over time. And so we can draft something like that and come back on the 26th.
Does that work for you, Director Beckett, as a motion?
What he said.
Yes.
Well said, thank you.
Have you got that, Heather? I think you'll have to make the motion.
Okay, so I move that.
Okay. I guess Director Beckett will make the motion, you're second. That makes sense. Okay, now we're okay. First, then we have Director McEwen, Director Steer, and Director Boyko. Go ahead, Director McEwen.
Thank you. Through the chair, I had to leave the room briefly during that report. So I just wanted to clarify something through the chair to staff. Are these changes primarily for cost recovery? Because if they are, I'm a big fan of cost recovery, and I would support it as is if that was the case, but I may have missed something when I had to step out of the room.
It's my understanding it's cost recovery, correct, Mike? It is cost recovery.
Then I would support the motion as it stands, but if staff wants to go back and look at some other options, that's fine too.
Thank you. Director Steer.
Thank you. Through the chair, the CIO articulated my thought process, and I would concur with Director McEwen in terms of the objective and purpose of the amendments here, or sorry, of the proposed resolutions. And I do want to articulate one of the problems with making motions on the fly, that it doesn't allow us to engage as a board in proper discussions around what will be the appropriate motion or move forward. So I really caution the board when we go about making motions on the fly without carefully crafting and articulating what the objectives are that we're trying to create. So I'll leave it at that, and I would vote. I would be comfortable voting on the motion that has been recommended by staff.
Thank you, Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, there is one note in here when we're talking about cost recovery, but there's one financial note on page 4. Financial benefits from increased fees and more efficient processes for development permits can be dedicated to other rural planning applications, initiatives, and long-term projects. That does not really sound like cost recovery to me. And second thing, we're assuming that these things will pass and that the person will magically make $100,000 or $1 million by subdividing. What happens if they don't? Do they get their money back, or they just stops at that point? Thank you.
Mike, do you want to start?
I'll answer the second one first. So depending on when an application is withdrawn, if somebody makes an application and say it's something that as staff we wouldn't support, we will often, what our process is, we let them know and have that discussion before it goes to an APC or a board meeting, and then they can make changes, withdraw what they want, and the money's refunded. The fees bylaw does talk about where partial fees are refunded if it gets to a certain point. But again, the work goes into the reports and et cetera, to bring it to the board at this stage. That's where the work goes into. So it's a fee for an application as opposed to a fee. It's not only if it's approved, but in a lot of instances, not always, because things do get turned down. But we work with applicants, at the beginning of this the stage. If something comes in, it doesn't make sense, we provide opportunities to make amendments or changes, or potentially even withdraw their application. Hopefully that answers your question. And then around the staff time, there's certainly there's delegation components in here that will free up staff time. And then so that the resources around the efficiencies that are created, and then some of the fees associated with the public hearings, that staff time can be dedicated to other projects. And then the cost recovery is there's been an additional junior planner position allocated to the department. And so that other staff will be free to do other things. And the intent of this was the fees would start to cover the junior planner position. That was the intent, and what we had, why we presented it this way. Hopefully that answers your question, Director Boyko.
Thank you, Director Cote.
Thank you. So through the chair to staff, a lot of these revised fees are not as they were in the old one. So I'm not sure what would be development variance for a foreshore. What would the cost be there? Or docks? Thank you.
So that would be a development permit, residential or rural. So where docks are now part of the development permit process in the Sprout Lake area, it would be a $300 fee, whereas in the past, those types of development permits were $100.
Thank you. We do have a motion on the floor. Heather, can I just get you to read it just to remind everybody what it is, please?
Yes, that the board directs staff to modify the development procedures fees bylaw to look at a staggered implementation of fees over time and bring back to the board for consideration.
Thank you. Any final questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, then we have staff reports. Meeting schedule for July 2023, building report for May 2023, monthly agreement and grant allocation report April 15th to June 22nd, 2023. Does anybody want to take anything out of there?
Move receipt for the reports.
Thank you. I'll second that motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. No committee reports today. Then we go to member reports. 911 Corporation, Director Beckett.
Thank you. The meeting was to be held in person in Campbell River, but in light of the Highway 4 closure and the detour, I did not attend in person, but did follow up with staff on Tuesday. There were 3 items of business other than the tour of the dispatch center. One was a request by Rogers Communications for support for a tower on Hornby Island. The 911 board did not agree to that, but in turn suggested that they secure their support from the residents of Hornby Island. There was a financial item number 2. There was a financial audit, and the audit was clean, no problems with that. They did identify the cash flow payments from regional districts were a bit of a challenge, and they're looking at trying to ensure that money is transferred from the regional governments in a timely fashion. And the last item, the cost proportion formula for the participating partners. There were 9 models, and the board agreed to continue with 50% assessment, 50% population for their formula. And this will be brought back to the 911 board with a resolution for board approval in the coming months. And that's my report, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Director Beckett. Vancouver Island Region Library, Director Cote.
No report. I missed the meeting.
Thank you. Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, Director Minions, are you there?
She's have to step away,
Oh, thank you.
and she has no report.
Air Quality Council, Port Alberni, Director Roth. West Coast Aquatic Board, Director Steer.
No report.
Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, Director Cote.
Thank you. We're just about at the end of our transition with our executive coordinator, Teresa Dennison. Contract will be up with UBCM at the end of this month. We'll be looking forward to resolutions. We have a couple that will be coming forward from AVICC. I believe one on watershed security. Resolution that came forward through Cumberland. So we're moving forward with that resolution, and that's all for now.
Thank you, Director Cote. Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee, Director Roth.
And no report, it's in the minutes. And the next one, I couldn't attend the meeting.
Thank you. Twascan Public Advisory Group, Director Roth.
I had to miss that meeting.
Agricultural Development Committee, Director Boyko.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So they had a meeting on May 30th. We'd already talked about meat processing, of course, but everyone supported it there. There was one thing to note here, the Alberta Farm Institute letter about the bylaws. They mentioned that 90% of the active members voted in favor of the letter that was sent off that we talked about last time. At the Fall Fair, there'll be a dedicated agricultural building this year, and look forward to seeing everyone there. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Boyko. Any other reports? Director CEO?
I just received message that the election results for Hue were sustained, and John Jack is the chief of the Hue Nation.
That's great news. Please congratulate him for us on behalf of the board. Can I get a motion that the board of directors receive the members' report? Moved by Director Sparrow, second by Director Roberts. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Late business, Director Roth has put in her resignation for some of her committees. So I'd like to move that Director Sparrow replace Director Roth on the following organizational committees: Municipal Finance Authority, Air Quality Council, Twascan Public Advisory Group, Port Alberni Port Authority Dry Dock, AV Museum and Heritage Board Alternate Director. Can I get a seconder for that? Second by Director Roth. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. And we'd like to thank you for your service to date, Director Roth, for those committees. Now we finally have questions from the public. I'd like to thank you for being so patient. If you'd like to come to the podium and ask your question. And please state your name, and can you just push the button?
Really got modernized.
Thank you.
Anyway, my name is Dorothy Brooks, and I was on the Agricultural Advisory Board, Beaver Creek, for many years. And I guess Beaver Creek still thinks I'm there because I got a hairy version of this morning and asked me if I would come to the meeting. And I'm sorry that I didn't tell you ahead of time, and I'm going to make this quick. It's about the bylaw P1473. As you know, our farmers are hurting. We're having a very difficult time. There is one farmer that's selling off his cows, and there's another one trying to downsize, and it takes 3 and now 4 generations of people to actually run one of these little farms. While I'm standing here, it's probably my great grandson that's picking up the eggs today, because I do have lighter duty now. Anyway, just a couple of notes that I've made here. In the meeting at the Beaver Creek Hall, it was overflowing. And I think there would have been many, many more people wanting to come here today, but the timing is not right. Everybody's busy in the fields right now. It's really hard for the farmers to get away, and everybody's exhausted. We are almost all 3rd generation farmers now. That's, as I say, I'm the first, and my son lives on the farm. He retired, some of you know Gordon. And the drought is causing serious, serious problems. The hay sales are going to be very poor for people that are looking for hay and those that are depending on it for their livelihood, because even with the irrigation, it's just burning up out there. And the cows are being sold. There's 2 people I've talked to now that said, look, we can't keep these cows. If we don't have the hay, we might just as well be selling to the hay that people are going to need it, and then maybe they can keep their cows. And sheep isn't any different. So it's tough out there. And the last thing that they really needed to see was this P1473. Because right now, they're pretty much all have 2 homes on their farms. The old farmers like me, my son, I have a grandson, but he lives on Beaver Creek Road. He's within 5 minutes every time we call him. He's been working full time in town and haying the last few nights. And that was really scary when it said that there could only be 2 farms, because I think some of the farmers realize out there that if they don't have a 3rd home and get those grandsons or granddaughters actually living on the farms, they're going to be taking jobs elsewhere. And hey, everybody likes to eat. And I think that, I really think that the people, the public themselves, are demanding more and more to see where their food is coming from, what, how is this being raised? How is it being slaughtered? Am I going to ever eat meat again? And this type of thing, or am I just going to become a vegetarian? And we've got to cater to that. And if somebody can put a couple of small cottages on there and have little farm tours and people around, I mean, that's for the better. When I was young and in my prime, you might say, every kindergarten in Port Alberni came out at one time each year to our place just to see how chickens laid the eggs, where the nest boxes were, simple things. But it was amazing to all those children, other than the ones at Beaver Creek, and they just sort of, we all do this, don't we? So anyway, that's all I'm going to say. But please, please, think about the farmers, think about where your food is coming from. And when it comes to the 1 acre, there's an awful lot of difference about putting 2 houses and maybe not having a 3rd on 1 acre. But what if you have 200 or 300 acres, or even 30? Like, it's a half a mile to the back of my property, and there's a road along the back, and my grandson should be building there. And I'm halfway through the property, so I'm, half a mile, I'm a quarter of a mile from my son's house on the road. And we're small. We're just small stuff. We're nothing. My husband worked off the farm, and, I played with the sheep. So anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody listening to me for a few minutes, and give some thought to the Airbnb and some of these other things. This is what the public are demanding now. They really want to know where their food is coming from. So thanks very much. I appreciate being here. I have no idea who gave me this. I think everybody in Beaver Creek still thinks I'm on the advisory board, to be quite honest. Thanks a lot, everybody. Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much for coming forward. And we have Director Boyko who would like to speak. He's on the Agriculture Development Committee. Go ahead, Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. First, I want to thank the wonderful lady for coming in and talking with us today. We're communicating well with the public on some things, but I'm not sure that the actual changes to the ALR regulation that allow people to have up to 10 accommodation units, be it RVs, cabins, cottages, places in their house, are available in the past couple of years to anybody that has farm status and land, and hasn't actually been communicated to the public, because I think members of the board know about this and some people, but maybe that should actually be passed on. Thank you.
Is there an opportunity for this lovely lady to maybe leave her contact information, and maybe a staff member could sit down and talk to her? Mike?
Yeah, yes, we can get a hold of Dorothy. But Dorothy, if you've got just 1 sec, because I just wanted to highlight a couple of things. Like, one of the comments you made about housing, and Director Beckett's comments about the ALC and the tourism accommodations. So yes, we are aware of the ALC regulation changes that allowed up to 10 either campsites or cottages for properties that are in the ALR that have farm status. I do want to highlight to the board that that is one of the things that would have been permitted or is permitted in the draft zoning bylaw. So that was one of the objectives that we've been trying to work for moving forward. And one of the things that one of the reasons we wanted to move forward with that new zoning bylaw is it would give that opportunity to all farms in the ALR with farm status without going through any type of rezoning or temporary use permit. So the way the ACRD zoning bylaw is currently written to take advantage of that opportunity that's now provided in the ALR requires either a rezoning application or a temporary use permit. So certainly from my perspective and recommendation to the board, that should just be allowed for farmers. Dorothy, the bylaw that the board considered today for the accessory dwelling units, that bylaw P1473, dealt with accessory dwelling units, but just the current zoning bylaw and the proposed new zoning bylaw allows for two homes on properties that have double the minimum acreage. I think your property, Dorothy, is zoned A2, which would be a 5-acre minimum parcel. I know you have well over 5 acres, or well over 10 acres, and yeah, so in the past, the ALC regulations just allowed people to have 2 homes. The ACRD zoning bylaw has always allowed 2 homes in those situations, and the proposed zoning bylaw always allows this. There's also another provision in the zoning bylaw that if it is housing for farm help, it's permitted. The issues have come up with the ALC. I know a number of circumstances on family farms where it's farm help on site. It's been permitted. And again, those things are in the zoning bylaw that stay in the zoning bylaw. So I just wanted to highlight sort of where the ACRD's at and some of the things that are available and some of the things that we're working towards allowing those farm things. Because I think it was a really good comment that you made about farmers need other opportunities for income. And that's the campsites and or cottage type use is something that makes a lot of sense. And
well, we've just had the neighbor's property has sold, and it's a 30 acres, pretty much the same as ours beside us. And it's a couple that have moved from Quebec. He works out of his house. She has decided that she wants a few chickens, a few ducks, and she wanted to do some kind of a high-end sort of bed and breakfast thing too. And they're planning on putting in fruit trees and having market gardens and stalls and all sorts of things. So, I mean, people are looking this way and realizing that they've got a pretty good thing going out here. And I think that, but it's going to take a lot of help, and government regulations are going to maybe have to just be a little more changing with the time, should we say?
Yeah.
Anyway,
and we do want to come out and meet with the Farmers Institute, go over what the proposed regulations were and sort of how it impacts farming and allowing things. So that will be
farmers are the last people that are going to sit around. And as I say, right now, everybody's working, 15, 18 hours a day. As long as it's daylight, there's things to be done, because if you have taken all your hay off, you've got to get that irrigation moving back pretty fast. It's just burning up around us. So anyway, thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for coming.
I'll really leave this time.
If you need any more clarity, just call Mike. Thank you. Is there any questions online, Heather?
So there are no attendees, and I've received no emails. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to make the motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter. Sections 91A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. 91C, labor relations or other employee relations. 91F, law enforcement, if the board considers that the closure could reasonably be expected to harm the conduct of an investigation under or enforcement of an enactment. Could I get a seconder, please? Second by Director Roberts. All in favor? Any opposed?